In this video, we'll be going through the first 13 chapters of A Storm of Swords with footage from the TV show, Game of Thrones artwork, history and lore footage, as well as character icons, so that way you always know who was speaking at any one time. We will show you what really happened compared to the book, and include interesting theories and foreshadowing of key events like the Red Wedding whenever we can. We're going to start with the first chapter of A Storm of Swords, Jaime I. But we're going to skip the prologue because it's kind of boring. All you need to know is that members of the Night's Watch were planning a mutiny before Craster's Keep at the Fist of the First Men, or where the Night's Watch was at the end of Season 2. However, this mutiny gets interrupted by the others' attack. Anyway, let's get started. A Storm of Swords, Jaime I. This chapter takes place just after Jaime's escape from Riverrun at the end of A Clash of Kings, where Catelyn got him drunk and he confessed to throwing Bran from the tower. He, Brienne, and Cleos Frey, Jaime's cousin, have escaped in a rowboat flowing towards King's Landing. The wind flows through Jaime's unkempt hair. He listens to the birds and feels the river beneath the boat as it moves toward the horizon. After spending captivity in the shadows, the world's sweetness makes Jaime Lannister feel lightheaded and a sudden burst of laughter escapes him. Rowing the boat, Brienne scowls as she tells him to be quiet. Jaime, never having seen her smile, thinks how scowling suits her plain, wide face better. He finds enjoyment by imagining her wearing one of Cersei's silk gowns instead of a woman's leather vest, but realizes the effort of dressing her would be useless as she'd still look like a cow. Jaime acknowledges how good she rows the boat and observes her unusually masculine features, noting her strong calves and muscular arms. Despite rowing through the night, she shows no signs of tiring, unlike Sir Cleos, who struggles beside her. Jaime wonders if her skill with a longsword matches her strength and plans to find out once he frees himself. Iron manacles bind his wrists and ankles, connected by a short, heavy chain. As they restrained him, Jaime had joked that as a Lannister, his word should have been good enough. Drunk due to Catelyn Stark, Jaime only recalls fragments of their escape from Riverrun, including some trouble with the jailer, but the gigantic wench had dealt with him. Afterward, they ascended what seemed like a never-ending spiral of steps that made his legs shaky and weak. He tripped a few times before the wench gave him her arm for support. Eventually, he was wrapped in a traveler's cloak and placed at the bottom of a boat. Jaime recalled hearing Lady Catelyn instruct someone to lift the portcullis at the water gate, firmly announcing that Sir Cleos Frey would be sent to King's Landing with new negotiations for Cersei. Jaime must have dozed off afterward, the alcohol playing its part. Stretching had felt wonderful, something his chains had never allowed him in captivity. Having mastered the skill of sleeping in the saddle on long marches, the current situation proved just as easy. He imagines Tyrion laughing when he hears how Jaime slept through his own escape. Now, fully awake and irritated by the fetters, Jaime greets Brienne formally, calling her a lady. He offers to take over at the oars if she removes his chains. She glares once more, and Jaime notices her huge teeth and intense distrust. She informs Jaime that he will stay in chains, referring to him as Kingslayer. Jaime retorts, calling her a wench after asking if she intends to row the whole way to King's Landing. She firmly tells him to call her Brienne, not wench. Jaime insists that she address him as Sir Jaime, not Kingslayer. When she questions whether he denies slaying a king, Jaime admits he doesn't. He then sarcastically asks if she denies being a woman, suggesting for her to unlace her breeches to prove it. Smiling, he mocks about her having no chest to prove her womanhood. Sir Cleos, obviously uneasy, urges Jaime to show some respect. Jaime considers Cleos a weak Lannister. Cleos is the son of Jaime's aunt Jenna and timid Emmon Frey, who always feared Lord Tywin. When the Freys allied with Riverrun, Aemon backed his wife's family, and Jaime thinks Castle Rock got the worst of it. Cleos, looking like a weasel, fights poorly and has the courage of a bold sheep. Lady Stark promised him freedom if he delivered a message to Tyrion, and Cleos vowed to do so. There had been a lot of oath-taking in that cell, especially from Jaime. It was the price Lady Catelyn had set for his release. She had pressed Brienne's sword tip against his chest, forcing him to swear never to take up arms against the Starks or Tullys again, to ensure Tyrion upheld his promise to return her daughters unscathed, and to swear by his honor as a knight, a Lannister, and a Kingsguard. She made him vow on the lives of his sister, father, sons, and by both the old and new gods. If he refused, she threatened to spill his blood. Jaime remembers the sword's point piercing through his rags as she twisted the blade. Jaime wondered what the High Septon would say about the sanctity of oaths made while drunk, chained to a wall, and under threat of death. Not that he cares much for the gods or the High Septon's opinion. He also recalls Lady Catelyn kicking over the pail in his cell. She had been a strange woman to trust her daughter's safety to a man without honor. But then Jaime realizes it's not him she's placing her faith in, it's Tyrion. This makes him comment aloud that perhaps she's not as foolish as he once thought. Misinterpreting his words, Brienne states that she's neither foolish nor deaf. Jaime, deciding not to mock her, responds calmly, explaining that he was merely talking to himself, a habit formed in captivity. She frowns and continues rowing in silence, focused on the oars. Jaime comments on her refined speech, suggesting she comes from a noble birth. She reluctantly reveals that her father is Selwyn of Tarth, Lord of Evenfall. Jaime recalls Tarth as a large, grim island in the narrow sea, then questions why she serves Robb Stark, knowing that Evenfall is sworn to Storm's End. She clarifies that she serves Lady Catelyn and that her task is to deliver Jaime safely to Tyrion, not engage in conversation. Jaime, tired of silence, expresses his frustration, but she suggests he talk to Sir Cleos, stating that she has nothing to say to someone she considers a monster. Jaime laughs. He asks her if there really are monsters among them now, and makes sarcastic remarks about where the monsters might be hiding, and it is unfortunate he is unarmed. She accuses him of being a man who defiles his sister, kills his king, and throws a kid to die, asserting that no better title fits him. Jaime reflects on the accusation, remembering how the boy had been spying when all he wanted was time alone with Cersei. Their long journey to Winterfell had been agonizing, seeing her every day but unable to be close, while knowing Robert would drunkenly crawl into her bed each night. Tyrion had tried to cheer him up, but it wasn't enough. Jaime, calling her a wench once more, warns her to speak respectfully of Cersei, but she remains defiant, insisting her name is Brienne. When questioned about why she cares what a so-called monster calls her, Brienne firmly repeats her name. Jaime notices Brienne's discomfort and decides to taunt her, sensing her weakness. He suggests that neither the title of lady nor knight would suit her. He compares her to a cow in armor, implying that no matter how well dressed, she wouldn't be fit for battle. Sir Cleos tries to ease the tension by suggesting they avoid conflict, given the long journey ahead. Jaime dismisses him, saying he prefers to settle matters with a sword, and assures Cleos he's just talking to Brienne. He then insults her further, asking if all the women of Tarth resemble her, and if that's the case, he pities their men. He adds that perhaps the men of Tarth have never experienced real beauty due to their isolation. As she rows, Brienne briefly mentions Tarth as a beautiful sapphire isle and warns Jaime to stop talking unless he wants her to gag him. Jaime, still provoking her, acknowledges her boldness, observing that few dare to call him a monster to his face, although he is sure that behind his back they do. So Cleos tries to attribute Brienne's accusations to Catelyn Stark, claiming that the Starks must use words as weapons since they cannot beat Jaime in combat. Jaime, annoyed, reflects on how he had indeed been defeated by swords and wonders whether Cleos truly believes what he's saying or if he's merely trying to gain favor. Cleos continues, insisting that anyone who thinks a knight of the Kingsguard could harm an innocent has no understanding of what honor truly means. Jaime considers Cleos a bootlicker and recalls his regret over throwing Bran Stark from the window, particularly after Cersei had scolded him, telling him Bran was 7 and believing they should have scared him into silence. He recalls his argument with Cersei, where she had scolded him for not thinking things through. She had been concerned about what would happen if Bran woke up and told his father what he had seen. Jaime had brushed off her worries, pulling her onto his lap and suggesting they could claim the boy was dreaming, or is lying about it, and even suggests killing Ned Stark if necessary, while dismissing any potential consequences from Robert. He told her he'd fight Robert if needed, and the singers can call it the wall for Cersei. Cersei had struggled against him, enraged, but he had kissed her, and after a brief resistance, she had responded. He remembers the taste of spice and wine on her lips as his hands tore at her bodice. Her chest were exposed. For a while, Bran Stark had slipped from their minds entirely. Jaime wonders if Cersei had remembered the boy afterward and hired the assassin Lady Catelyn had mentioned to ensure the boy never woke up. However, he doubts it, thinking that if Cersei wanted Bran dead, she would have sent him to handle it, not an incompetent assassin who blundered the job. The morning sun glints off the river. Sir Cleos helps Brienne raise the sail, displaying the red and blue Tully colors. Jaime realizes this choice puts them at risk if Lannister forces spot them, but they have no other option. Brienne steers as Jaime, his chains rattling, tosses the leeboard. With the wind and current in their favor, Jaime suggests Brienne deliver him to his father to save time, but she refuses, determined to return only with Lady Catelyn's daughters. Jaime looks to Sir Cleos and asks for his knife, but Brienne quickly objects, refusing to allow him any weapon. Seeing her fear despite his chains, Jaime changes his request, asking Cleos to shave his head but leave the beard. When Cleos asks him why, Jaime Lannister tells him he is known for his long hair and clean-shaven face, and would be less recognizable as a bald man with a scruffy yellow beard, adding that he wants to avoid being identified while still in chains. So Cleos struggles with the dull blade, ripping through Jaime's tangled hair and tossing the chunks into the river. After washing his head, Jaime looks into the water and barely recognizes himself. Bald and gaunt, he seems to have aged by half a decade, with sunken eyes and new lines. Without his golden hair, he notices he no longer resembles Cersei, something he knows she would hate. As the day wears on, Sir Cleos dozes off. Jaime leans back, observing the world around him, which, compared to the dungeon, is extraordinary to behold. They pass small shacks on stilts, but see no sign of life. Moments later, he notices what appears to be a floating log, but turns out to be a dead man in a Lannister crimson cloak, tangled in tree roots. He wonders if he knew him. Navigating the Trident is the easiest way to move supplies and people in the Riverlands. In peaceful times, the waterways are busy with fisherfolk, grain barges, and merchants. Now, the war changed everything. They pass empty villages with only an abandoned fishing net as a sign of life. A girl who is by her horse, giving it water, flees as soon as she spots their sail. Later, peasants digging near a burnt tower house briefly stare before returning to their work, realizing there is no danger. The Red Fork winds through twists and curves, scattered with tiny forested islands and hidden sandbanks. Brienne skillfully navigates these obstacles. After Jaime comments on her expertise, she explains that growing up on Tarth, she learned to row and sail long before riding a horse. Sir Cleos rubs his eyes and complains about his sore arms, hoping the wind holds. He mentions smelling rain, which Jaime welcomes, thinking it might wash away the stench from his time in Riverrun's dungeons. Cleo spots smoke downriver. As they get closer, Jaime notices the charred remains of a structure and a live oak with women's bodies hanging from its branches. The ropes dig into the flesh of the bodies' necks. As they approach, Brienne comments that no true knight would support such brutality. Jaime replies that knights see and do far worse in war. Brienne directs the boat toward the shore, insisting she won't leave innocents for the crows. Jaime counters, calling her a heartless wench, telling her crows need to eat too, and urges her to stick to the river and let the dead be. They dock upstream near the large leaning oak tree. As Brienne lowers the sail, Jaime awkwardly steps out, hindered by his chains. Brienne and Cleos hold the boat onto the muddy shore, while the bodies swing above them, decaying like rotten fruits. Brienne suggests that one of them has to cut the women down. Jaime, stepping onto land, volunteers to climb if she removes his shackles. While the wench examines one of the hanging women, Jaime moves forward in his chains. He spots a vulgar sign on the neck of the corpse and grins as he reads it aloud. It accuses the women of laying with lions. He notes the dishonor, though emphasizing it came from her side, not his, and wonders who the women were. Sir Cleos chimes in, recalling the women as tavern workers, mentioning that some of his men had stayed at the inn before on their way to Riverrun. Jaime has no interest in whorehouses, leaving that to Tyrion. The only woman he's ever wanted is Cersei. He figures the women probably served his father's soldiers, earning their nooses for it. After a quick scan of the river to ensure they're alone, he comments they're on Bracken Land, where Lord Jonas, whose castle Jaime's father burned, might have ordered the hangings. Sir Cleo suggests it might be Mark Piper or Beric Dondarrion, though Beric doesn't kill townsfolk. He also considered Roose Bolton's Northmen as possible culprits. Jaime states that Bolton lost to Tywin at the Green Fork. Sir Cleos replies that Bolton wasn't broken and moved south again as Lord Tywin attacked the fords. Cleos adds that he heard at Riverrun that Bolton took Harrenhal from Sir Amory Lorch. Not liking the situation, he addresses Brienne by name, hoping she will listen. He warns her that if Bolton controls Harrenhal, it's highly likely both the Trident and Kingsroad are guarded. Jaime notices a flicker of hesitation in her big eyes, but she insists that Jaime is under her protection and that anyone who comes for him would have to go through her first. Jaime, unimpressed, remarks that he doubts anyone would be deterred by that. Brienne, taking offense, insists she is just as skilled as he is, reminding him that she had been one of King Renly's 7 in the Rainbow Guard, and that Renly himself had cloaked her in the striped silk. Mocking her, Jaime sarcastically asks if the Rainbow Guard was made up of her and 6 other women. Flustered, Brienne turns away, muttering that they have graves to dig, and goes to climb the tree. As each corpse drops, the smell worsens. Sir Cleos grumbles about the effort being wasted and complains that they had no shovels to dig the graves, refusing to use his sword. Brienne cuts him off, suddenly shouting as she leaps down from the tree. She urgently orders them to return to the boat, warning that there is a sail approaching. They rush to the boat as quickly as possible, with Jaime needing help from his cousin to get aboard. Brienne pushes off with an oar and swiftly raises the sail, telling Cleos to assist with rowing. Cleos obeys and the boat picks up speed. Jaime looks upriver and spots only the tip of an approaching sail. Brienne urges Cleos to row faster. Soon, both the inn and the tip of the sail vanishes, but Jaime knows it's only temporary because after their chasers go around the bend, they'll be seen again. He sarcastically suggests the Tullys might stop to bury the dead women, but dreads getting caught again. While thinking how Tyrion would think of something clever, all Jaime can consider is fighting them. For nearly an hour, they weave around bends and aisles, hoping they've shaken the pursuit, only for the distant sail to reappear. Cleos pauses and curses for the others to take the pursuers. Brienne commands him to keep rowing. Jaime watches the river galley approaching, noticing that with every stroke it grows larger. He calculates 9 oars per side, meaning a minimum of 18 men, perhaps more if fighters are accompanying the rowers. Its larger sails make fleeing hopeless. Jaime raises his shackled wrists, wanting to take on 8 of the approaching men, and asks Brienne to free him. She dismisses his request, concentrating on her rowing. Jaime explains that they had an advantage with their head start, but the galley crew, rowing since dawn and taking turns resting, must be fatigued. Confident, Jaime remarks that they can still manage to take out several of their enemies in a fight. Cleos, in disbelief, repeats the approaching enemy number. Jaime adjusts it to 20 or more. Groaning, Cleos admits they stand no chance of winning. Jaime, unfazed, replies that their best outcome is to die with swords in hand. Brienne halts her rowing, sweat streaking strands of her hair to her brow. Furious, she shouts that he's under her protection. Jaime can't help but chuckle at her fierceness, comparing her to the hound with breasts. He tells her to either protect him or release him so he can defend himself. The galley speeds downriver, resembling a massive wooden dragonfly. The men crowd the deck, and the glint of weapon catches Jaime's attention. He spots archers, his most despised adversaries. At the bow of the advancing galley stands a sturdy man with a shaved head and powerful arms. Jaime recognizes Riverrun's captain of the guard, Sir Robin Rhaegar. Sir Robin Rhaegar had once been renowned for his relentless fighting, but those days were behind him. Now, much like Hoster Tully, he had aged. Jaime raises his hands to his mouth and shouts across the water, asking if Sir Robin has come to wish him Godspeed. Sir Robin Rhaegar responds loudly, saying he's there to take Jaime back, calling him Kingslayer and mocking the loss of his golden hair. Jaime retorts with a joke, claiming he plans to blind his enemies with the shine of his head. Humorless, Sir Robin commands them to toss their oars and weapons into the river to avoid bloodshed. Sir Cleos, nervous, turns to Jaime, urging him to explain that Lady Catelyn freed them as part of a lawful exchange. Jaime passes on the message, but Sir Robin waves it off, stating that Catelyn Stark has no authority over Riverrun. Sir Robin shouts for them to throw their swords into the river. He then signals to the 4 archers positioned around him. Jaime replies that while he lacks a sword, if he had one, he'd gladly skewer Sir Robin and handle the archers as well. In response, a volley of arrows are released. 1 hits the mast, 2 tear through the sail, and the last landing a mere foot from Jaime. A wide bend of the Red Fork appears ahead. Brienne steers the boat, the sail snapping as it catches the wind. A large island splits the river with a main flow to the right and a narrow channel to the left, near the northern bluffs. Brienne adjusts the tiller, turning a left, and the sail flutters. Jaime watches her eyes, thinking she's got pretty and calm ones. He knows how to spot fear, but sees none in her. She is resolute, not hopeless. The galley enters the bend, closing the distance. Brienne directs Cleos to take the tiller and tasks Jaime with using an oar to keep them off the rocks. Jaime accepts the job, aware that an oar, though not a sword, could still be used for both offense and defense. Cleos quickly passes the oar to Jaime and moves to the rear of the boat. They navigate past the island's head and sharply turn into the narrow channel, sending water splashing against the bluff as the boat tilts. On the left, the steep bluff rises, with the river swirling around the rocks and boulders at its base. They slip into the shadows, concealed by the trees and cliff. Jaime pushes off a submerged boulder, confident they have a brief break from the arrows. After hearing a splash, he notices Brienne moving through a shallow pool, clambering over rocks, and starting her ascent up the cliff. Sir Cleos gawks, but Jaime sharply tells him to steer and ignore her. They spot the sail slipping through the foliage as the river galley fully comes into view, just 25 yards away at the cutoff. Its bow swings sharply and several arrows are released, all missing their mark by a wide margin. Brienne is halfway up the cliff, steadily pulling herself from one handhold to the next. Jaime suspects Ryja will soon notice her and order his men to shoot her down. Looking to take advantage of Ryder's pride, Jaime calls out, trying to provoke a reckless response. So Robin lifts his hand, signaling his archers to lower their bows, and tells Jaime to speak quickly. As the boat drifts through the scattered rocks, Jaime offers a different solution: single combat between them. Robin responds that he wasn't born yesterday, but Jaime warns Robin that he might not survive the afternoon. He raises his manacled hands, offering to fight in chains, and asks what Robin has to fear. Robin replies that he isn't afraid and would gladly fight, but his orders are to bring Jaime back alive. He swiftly signals his bowmen to prepare their next volley. At less than 20 yards, the archers are posed to strike, but as they draw their bows, a cascade of pebbles rains down. Stones bounce off helmets and clatter onto the deck. Glancing up, they see a huge boulder break free from the bluff. So Robin shouts as it hits the cliff, splits, and crashes down. The larger piece snaps the mast, rips the sail, and hurls 2 archers into the river, crushing a rower's leg. Water floods the galley, likely from the smaller piece puncturing the hull. The rowers' screams echo as the archers flail helplessly in the water. Jaime howls in laughter. As they leave the cutoff behind, the galley fights through shallow currents and tangled debris, and Jaime decides the gods are on his side. So Robin and his archers will have a miserable trek back to Riverrun, and he's free of the wench as well. He muses that he couldn't have orchestrated it more perfectly, and eagerly anticipates his freedom once the irons are removed. So Cleo shouts, drawing Jaime's attention to Brienne, already on the cliff top ahead of them. She had crossed a strip of land while they followed the river's curve. She dives off the rock with unexpected grace, and Jaime resists the thought of her hitting a stone. As Sir Cleo steers the boat toward her, Jaime grips his oar, ready for a well-aimed swing when she gets close, imagining it could finally rid him of her. Against his better judgment, Jaime finds himself extending the oar over the water. Brienne grabs hold and he pulls her into the boat. As she climbs aboard, water pours from her hair and soaked clothes, forming a puddle on the deck. He silently notes that she looks even uglier when wet, something he hadn't thought possible. He tells her she's a foolish wench and that they could have left her behind. He wonders aloud if she expects him to thank her for it. Brienne responds that she doesn't want his gratitude, only that she vowed to deliver him safely to King's Landing. Jaime, smiling, comments on how she actually intends to keep it, finding it quite a surprising thing. So, this chapter shows that Jaime never killed his cousin like we see in Season 2, Episode 7 of the show, which again is the show trying to do everything they can to assassinate Jaime's character, by having him force himself on Cersei after Joffrey's death, telling Tyrion that he never really cared for the small folk of King's Landing, and leaving Brienne to be with Cersei, which is the complete opposite of what he does in the books. A Storm of Swords. Catelyn I. Catelyn stands before Sir Desmond Grell, who has been loyal to House Tully throughout his life, starting as a squire and rising to master-at-arms by the time she married. He witnessed her grow into a lady, a wife, and the mother of a king. Now he likely views her as a traitor. Edmure had assigned Sir Desmond as Warden of Riverrun before heading to war, leaving him responsible for addressing her actions. To soften the tension, he brought along Althuradus Wayne, her father's stern steward. They stand before her and neither says a word, each anticipating the other to speak first. Catelyn, feeling drained, reflects on how these men have dedicated their lives to serving her father, and now she has rewarded their loyalty with shame. Sir Desmond finally speaks, expressing sorrow over Catelyn's sons and mentioning that Maester Vyman had informed them. Eutheritus Wan also shares his condolences on behalf of Riverrun, but hesitates. So Desmond suggests that her grief must have driven her to madness, a madness men would understand. Catelyn, however, firmly declares that she knew exactly what she was doing and that it was treason. She insists that she's the only one responsible and should be punished to avoid the perception that they conspired to free Jaime. So Desmond is shocked when Catelyn herself suggests being placed in the shackles meant for Jaime, dismissing it as impossible for the king's mother. Eutharides proposes the idea of a tower cell instead. Catelyn, however, requests to be confined to her father's chambers so she can comfort him in his final days. After considering, Sir Desmond agrees. He assures her that she will have every comfort, though her movement will be restricted to visits the Sept. Catelyn accepts this, giving her word that she will make no attempt to escape. Sir Desmond, relieved, leaves, but Eutharides lingers to tell Catelyn that her actions were in vain. Sir Desmond had already sent Sir Robin Ryger to pursue Jaime Lannister, either to capture him or return with his head. Expecting nothing less, Catelyn prays, asking the warrior to grant strength to Brienne's striking arm. Having done all she can, she knows that only hope remains. Her belongings are moved to her father's chamber, where the large canopy bed, adorned with carvings of leaping trout, stands at its heart. Her father has been shifted a short distance down the stairs, his sick bed now facing the triangular balcony off his solar, so he can look out over the rivers he has cherished throughout his life. Catelyn enters to see Lord Hoster asleep. She steps out onto the balcony, placing one hand on the rough stone railing. Beyond the castle's edge, the swift tumblestone flows into the still red fork, giving her a clear view down the river. A striped sail from the east would mean Sir Robin is coming back. Catelyn sees the water remain clear and offers a quiet thanks to the gods. She then returns indoors to sit by her father's side. Whether Lord Hoster senses her presence is unclear to her, though staying by his side brings her some comfort. Inwardly, she questions if he would condemn her for her actions if he knew, wondering whether he would have done the same if she and Lysa were in danger, or if he would dismiss it as a mother's insanity. The room is filled with a thick and rotten odour of death, stirring memories of Bran and Rickon, who were slain by Theon Greyjoy. While her mourning for Ned remains, the pain of losing her children is overwhelming. She quietly murmurs to herself about the cruelty of losing a child, her voice scarcely reaching her father. Opening his eyes, Lord Hoster, in a strained voice, calls out the name Tansy. Catelyn, who is used to him confusing her with her mother or Lysa, doesn't recognize the name and gently tells him she is Catelyn. He mutters incoherently about forgiveness, blood, and the name Tansy again. Puzzled, Catelyn begins to wonder if her father had a past with another woman, perhaps someone from his youth, or a servant after her mother's passing. She asks who Tansy is and if she should try to find her, uncertain if the woman is still alive. Lord Hoster utters the word dead as he grasps Catelyn's hand, telling her she will have more children, true-born ones. Catelyn silently wonders if he has forgotten Ned's death, and whether he is speaking to her, Tansy, her sister, or their mother. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hoster is talking about Lysa and how he made her drink moon tea without her realizing it to get rid of Littlefinger's child in her, and now he regrets what he has done to her. As he coughs, bloody phlegm appears and he clutches her hand tightly, urging her to be a good wife, promising that the gods will grant her true-born sons. A jolt of pain causes his grip to tighten, his nails digging into her skin, and a stifled scream escapes him. Maester Vyman appears promptly, mixing a dose of milk of the poppy and assisting Lord Hoster in swallowing it. Before long, he slips into a heavy sleep. Catelyn brings up that her father had inquired about a woman named Tansy, but the Maester appears confused. He says he doesn't recognize the name, but offers to investigate. Once the maester departs, she walks out onto the balcony, searching for any sign of a sail, dreading the sight of one. With none in view, her hopes remain unbroken. As dusk approaches, a raven arrives at the castle. Maester Wyman arrives at dusk to tend to Lord Hoster and brings Catelyn a simple meal. He informs her that Eutharides Wan is certain no woman named Tansy ever served at Riverrun during his time. Catelyn mentions seeing a raven earlier and asks if Jaime has been taken again, while in her mind she worries if he might have been slain. Wyman replies that there has been no news of the Kingslayer. She then anxiously asks if there has been another battle and whether Edmure or Robb is in danger, pleading for reassurance. Wyman hesitates before glancing around to ensure the room is empty and informs her that Lord Tywin has withdrawn from the Riverlands and that the fords are calm. When asked where the raven came from, Wyman, busying himself with Lord Hoster's bedclothes, responds that it came from the west. When Catelyn presses if it was news about Robb, Wyman confirms it, though he hesitates. Sensing from his behavior that something is wrong, she demands to know if Robb is hurt, silently praying he isn't dead. Wyman reluctantly admits that Robb was wounded while attacking the crag, but quickly assures her that it's nothing serious, as Robb himself wrote that he hopes to return soon. Concerned, Catelyn presses for details about the wound, but Wyman repeats that Robb has said it is nothing to worry about. Catelyn, still worried, asks if Robb is being properly cared for. Wyman reassures her that the maester at the crag will tend to Robb. He gathers his potions and quickly leaves the room, leaving Catelyn alone with her sleeping father. The milk of the poppy has taken effect, and Lord Hoster sinks into a heavy slumber. A faint trail of saliva escapes from his lips, soaking the pillow beneath him. Catelyn carefully wipes it away with a cloth, and at her touch, Lord Hoster murmurs quietly, whispering broken words of forgiveness, blood, and divine mercy. His strange words unsettle her deeply. She reflects on the mention of blood and silently wonders about the woman her father is referring to and what he could have done that requires such forgiveness. Before dawn, she wakes with her father's words. She wonders if he could have fathered a bastard with Tansy, though the idea seems hard to accept. While it wouldn't shock her to learn that Edmure has illegitimate children, imagining her father doing the same feels almost impossible. She wonders if Tansy was a pet name her father used for Lysa, recalling how he once mistook her for her sister. She reflects on Lord Hoster's words. Lysa had miscarried 5 times, but never at Riverrun, except possibly the first time. Both sisters were married on the same day and stayed at Riverrun when their husbands left for Robert's Rebellion. When their moonblood didn't come, Lysa had happily spoken about the sons they were expecting. Soon after, Lysa's blood came, and her joy faded. Catelyn had thought Lysa was only late, but now she questions if her sister had been pregnant. Catelyn recalls the moment she had first handed Robb to her sister. Tiny, flushed, and wailing, but brimming with energy. The instant Robb was placed in Lysa's arms, her sister broke down in tears, quickly returning the baby and rushing out. If Lysa had experienced a miscarriage, it would clarify many things, including their father's cryptic words. Catelyn reflects on Lysa's rushed marriage to Jon Arryn, who was already older than their father at the time and still without an heir. Both of Jon's earlier wives didn't give birth. His family line had suffered. His brother's son was executed with Brandon Stark, and his cousin fell in the Battle of the Bells. Jon needed someone who could bear children to secure the future of House Arryn. Now she understands why Lysa's marriage lacked love. The Arryns valued pride and honor. Jon likely married Lysa for House Tully's support and an heir, but loving a reluctant wife with a troubled past must have been difficult. He was likely kind and dutiful, but Lysa needed affection. As the day wears on, Catelyn sits by Lord Hoster's bedside, but then loud voices and a trumpet blast catch her attention, making her tense as she thinks of Sir Robin. From the balcony, she hears horses and cheers, but sees nothing. Curious, she climbs the stairs to the roof, reminding herself that Sir Desmond hadn't forbidden it. Outside, hundreds of riders wait in the fields. When the wind shifts, their banners lift, and Catelyn feels relief at the sight of Riverrun's leaping trout, signaling Edmure's return. Catelyn waits for 2 hours until Edmure finally goes to her. During that time, the castle fills with joyful gatherings as men reconnect with their families. From her father's balcony, she watches 3 ravens fly from the rookery. Edmure finally arrives, his boots and armor streaked with dried mud. Despite his success, his appearance is haggard. Catelyn, uneasy, inquires if anything is amiss and if the Lannisters have made it across the river. Edmure informs her that he forced them to retreat, Lord Tywin, Gregor Clegane, and Adam Marbrand, but winces at the mention of Stannis. He reveals that Stannis was defeated at King's Landing, his fleet destroyed, and his forces dispersed. Since Catelyn is still having nightmares of the shadow slipping into Renly's tent and how blood poured from his throat, she finds it hard to match Edmure's clear distress. With a calm voice, she notes that Stannis was just as much an enemy as Tywin. Edmure tells her that Highgarden, Dorne, and the rest of the South have sworn loyalty to Joffrey. He criticizes her for freeing the Kingslayer without permission, but Catelyn calmly replies that she acted from a mother's right, though mentally notes how Highgarden's support is a heavy blow to Robb's plans. He repeats that she had no right, reminding her that Jaime was Robb's prisoner, and Robb had tasked him with keeping Jaime secure. Catelyn insists that Brienne will keep Jaime safe, as she swore it. Edmure questions Brienne's capability, but Catelyn reassures him that Jaime will be delivered to King's Landing in exchange for Arya and Sansa. Edmure insists that Cersei will never give up her captives, but Catelyn corrects him, reminding him that it was Tyrion who made the promise, with Jaime swearing as well. Edmure dismisses Jaime's oath as meaningless and mentions that Tyrion was rumoured to be severely wounded in the battle and may not even survive by the time Brienne reaches King's Landing, if she makes it there at all. Catelyn, unsettled, wonders if the gods could truly be so merciless. Although she had secured numerous vows from Jaime, it was Tyrion's word she had placed her faith in. Edmure doesn't notice Catelyn's distress and explains that Jaime was his responsibility and he intends to recover him. He adds that he has already sent 3 ravens to ensure Lord Bolton gets the message, noting that the route from Riverrun to King's Landing passes close to Harrenhal. When Catelyn hears this, dread fills her and she questions whether he realizes what he's done. Edmure reassures her that he left her involvement out and simply wrote that Jaime had escaped, offering a reward for his recapture. Catelyn asks why the Lannisters would return her daughters if Jaime's escape was not part of a hostage exchange. Edmure insists that Jaime will be brought back, but Catelyn believes his actions have only ensured she will never see her girls again. She points out that Brienne could have delivered Jaime safely as long as no one was pursuing them. Unable to continue, she tells Edmure to leave her, and though the castle will soon be his, her tone leaves no room for argument. All she longs for is to lay on her bed, close her eyes, and pray for a dreamless sleep. So, in this chapter, we learn that Hoster tricked Lysa to drink moon tea without her knowing so she would not become pregnant with Littlefinger's child. This inadvertently makes Lysa crazy since her father, the person she should trust most in the world, used that trust to murder her own child and forced her to sleep with an ugly old man for the rest of her life. Also, drinking the moon tea is probably what made it so hard for Lysa to have her own children, so Hoster didn't just kill one of Lysa's children, but several, since she probably would have had as many children as Cat if she hadn't drunk the moon tea. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 3. Arya I. Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie ride under the dark sky, Harrenhal disappearing behind them. They head north, following an old road. Arya leads the way on her stolen horse, while Gendry and Hot Pie struggle to keep up. Distant wolves' howls echo, and Arya occasionally looks back to see if the boys are still following, and to check if they are being chased. Arya knows they will be tracked for everything she has stolen: 3 steeds, a chart, and a knife from Roose Bolton's quarters. Also for slitting the guard's throat who bent to pick up the metal token Jaqen H'ghar handed her. Once they realize what had been stolen and that the servant known as Nan, Weasel, or Ari is missing, Lord Bolton's men will chase after them. Arya suspects the hunt might be led by Bolton's man Walton, known as Steel Shanks for the greaves on his legs, or by Vargo Hoat and his sellswords, the Brave Companions. Arya thinks about the grim fate awaiting them if caught. Vargo Hoat would cut off their hands and feet, and Roose Bolton would flay them. She still wears her page's garb, with the flayed men of the Dreadfort sewn over her heart. After crossing the first stream, Arya steers her horse off the road and follows the water for a quarter mile before climbing a stony bank, hoping it will confuse the dogs if the hunters come. She knows they can't stay on the road. The 2 boys don't argue with Arya's choices. With the map in her possession, Hot Pie seems as frightened of her as he is of the men on their tail, especially after witnessing her kill the guard. Arya thinks it's better this way. His fear will keep him from acting recklessly. The rain starts and stops, but their cloaks keep them dry. Arya directs them at a cautious and even pace, as neither boy is skilled on horseback. Soon after, they come across 3 wolves devouring a fawn. After a small incident where they back away from the wolves, they travel through a scorched settlement where the skeletons of dead men are strung up from apple trees. Hot Pie softly mutters a prayer to the mother, while Arya quickly recites her own list: Sir Gregor, Dunstan, Polliver, Raff the Sweetling, the Tickler, the Hound, Sir Ilyn, Sir Meryn, King Joffrey, and Queen Cersei. The next day, they stop briefly to water the horses and eat a quick meal, sharing bread that Hot Pie had swiped from the kitchens. Gendry asks Arya where they're heading, and she replies that they are going north to reach the Trident. She shows them the map she stole, explaining that they'll follow the river upstream to Riverrun. Hot Pie, confused, asks which one is Riverrun. Arya points to it. Surprised, Hot Pie asks if Arya can read, and she nods. She assures them that they'll be safe once they reach Riverrun, but when Hot Pie asks why, Arya considers revealing that Riverrun is her grandfather's home and that her brother Robb will be waiting for them there, but she holds back. Instead, she simply says they'll be safe when they arrive. They continue riding. Even though she feels uneasy about keeping the truth from Hot Pie, she doesn't trust him with her real identity. Gendry already knows, but that's different. He has a secret of his own, although he has no idea what it is. Arya pushes the group to move faster. At times, Arya instructs Hot Pie and Gendry to continue ahead while she retraces her steps to throw off any pursuers. From a ridge, she spots figures crossing a stream and briefly fears it's Bolton's men, but it's only a pack of wolves. She howls at them, and the largest wolf howls back, sending a shiver through her. Around noon, Hot Pie begins complaining about his sore backside and how he desperately needs sleep, claiming he's so exhausted he might fall off his horse. Arya asks Gendry who would find him first if he did, wolves or the Murmurs. Gendry responds that the wolves would, since they have better senses. Hot Pie falls silent after that and manages to stay on his horse as they continue riding. Soon the rain comes. Gendry is struggling almost as much as Hot Pie, though he refuses to complain. His awkward seat in the saddle makes it clear he isn't used to riding. Arya realizes she has forgotten that both Gendry and Hot Pie are city-born and unused to horses, unlike her who has been riding since childhood. Arya knows she could move faster alone, but she refuses to leave Gendry and Hot Pie. They are the closest thing she has to a family now, and if not for her, Gendry would still be working as a blacksmith's apprentice, and Hot Pie would be helping in the kitchen at Harrenhal. If caught, Arya intends to tell the Murmurs that she is Arya, Ned Stark's daughter and Robb Stark's sister. She plans to command them to take her to her brother and spare Gendry and Hot Pie, but she doubts they'll believe her, and even if they do, Roose Bolton, her brother's bannerman, still frightens her. She silently vows not to let them be captured. As sunset approaches, they reach the bank of a river. Hot Pie, excited, exclaims that they found the trident and just need to go upstream. Arya, unsure, points out that the river is too narrow to be the trident, and they haven't traveled far enough. Arya checks the map. She points to where she thinks they are as the boys look over her shoulder. Hot Pie notes that Harrenhal is still close, and Arya explains they're far from the trident, showing him other rivers. They can't figure out which river it is. Arya, feeling frustrated, decides they'll cross the river and continue heading north. Hot Pie nervously asks whether horses can swim. Gendry, still uneasy, wonders if they're lost. Arya tells the boys they might be lost, but she's crossing the river regardless, and they can either join her or stay behind. She gets back on her horse and rides along the bank until she finds a spot that seems safe. Even then, her horse hesitates before entering the fast-flowing brown water, which rises to its belly. Water fills Arya's boots, but she urges her horse forward and climbs out on the other side. Hearing splashes behind her, she notices the boys making their way through the river and emerging beside her, drenched. She informs them that the river wasn't the trident. They reach another river, less deep and simpler to cross. No one disagrees when Arya says they are crossing it and that it isn't the trident. As night begins to fall, they stop to rest. Cold and wet, Hot Pie suggests a fire, but Arya and Gendry quickly refuse. Arya notices Gendry echoing her, just as Jon used to, and she misses him more than her other brothers. Hot Pie asks if they can get some sleep, complaining how exhausted and sore he is. Arya tells him they can't stop, warning that it'll be much worse if they are caught. He argues that it's almost dark and that the moon isn't visible, but Arya firmly tells him to get back on his horse. However, eventually exhaustion forces them to sleep. Visions of violence fill Arya's sleep. The bloody murmurs appear, at least 4 of them, a Lyseni, Ilgo the Dothraki, and a Dornishman. They ride endlessly through the rain in rusted armor and soaked leather. They believe they are hunting her, but Arya knows it's the opposite. She is hunting them. In the dream, Arya isn't a small girl. She becomes a massive, fierce wolf, Nymeria, emerging from the forest and baring her fangs with a deep snarl, and whinnies in panic, while the others call out in a language she doesn't know. Before they have a chance to respond, more wolves rush out of the shadows and rain, forming a large pack. Thin, soaked, and moving in complete silence, her pack surrounds them and kills them. This is how Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie were able to escape from Harrenhal without being brought back. Nymeria's wolf pack took care of those pursuing them. So this chapter shows off Arya's warging abilities and is probably why they were able to escape from Harrenhal when so many others had failed, since Roose Bolton and the brave companions would not have allowed them to escape so easily if not for the wolf attacks. Otherwise, they would have been brought back as corpses and paraded around as examples of what happens to those who try to escape. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 4, Tyrion I. The sound of iron hinges wakes Tyrion up. After surviving the Battle of the Blackwater, he is excruciatingly weak. A figure moves toward him, and he shudders. In Maegor's Holdfast, every servant answers to the Queen, and any visitor could be another of Cersei's agents, sent to complete what Sir Mandon failed to finish. Spotting the dwarf's pale face in the candlelight, the man chuckles and asks if he hurt himself shaving. Tyrion touches the long wound stretching from his eye, across his damaged nose and down to his jaw, feeling the tender flesh. He replies that he did, with an enormous razor. Bronn, freshly shaven, wears soft leather boots, a silver-studded belt, and a light green silk cloak. His dark grey doublet is decorated with a bright green embroidered burning chain. Tyrion asks Bronn where he has been, stating he sent for him about 2 weeks ago. Bronn corrects him, saying it was only 4 days ago, and mentions he came twice but found Tyrion completely unresponsive. Tyrion clarifies he wasn't dead, though his sister had tried to make it so. He then asks about the strange symbol on Bronn's chest. Bronn grins and explains that it's his new sigil, a flaming chain on a grey field ordered by Tyrion's father, adding that he's now Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, and tells Tyrion not to forget it. Tyrion leans back against the pillows, reminding Bronn that it was his promise, not his father's, that led to his knighthood. The reference to his father's orders irritates him, as Tywin has quickly taken over the Tower of the Hand. With a bitter tone, Tyrion remarks that while he lost half his nose, Bronn gained a knighthood, sarcastically adding that the gods owe him answers. He then asks if Tywin knighted Bronn himself. Bronn explains that those who survived the Winch Tower battle were blessed by the High Septon and knighted by the Kingsguard, though the process took most of the day since only 3 white swords are still alive. Tyrion acknowledges that Sir Mandon was killed during the battle, pushed into the river by Pod just before he could strike Tyrion down. He asks Bronn who else died. Bronn tells him that the Hound isn't dead but has disappeared. Tyrion bitterly comments that his sister keeps him in the dark and lies to him, while Podrick, though loyal, struggles to communicate clearly. Tyrion mentions sending Pod to fetch Sir Jacelyn, only to be told that he was dead. Bronn confirms that Jacelyn was lost, along with thousands of others, prompting Tyrion to demand how it happened. Bronn recounts that during the battle, Cersei instructed the Kettleblacks to escort the king back to the castle. Upon seeing Joffrey depart, about half the Goldcloaks chose to follow. Jacelyn Bywater, known as Iron Hand, stepped in their path and commanded them to return to the walls. He was berating them and had nearly persuaded them when an arrow pierced his neck. After that, they dragged him off his horse and finished him off. Tyrion reluctantly asks if Joffrey had been in any real danger. Bronn replies that Joffrey was at no more risk than most, maybe even less. Tyrion inquires who now commands the Goldcloaks. Bronn informs him that his father placed Sir Adam Marbrand, one of his bannermen, in charge. The Goldcloaks would normally resist an outsider, but Sir Adam Marbrand is a smart choice, the kind of man, like Jaime, that others naturally followed. Realizing he has lost control of the City Watch, Tyrion notes that Pod hasn't had any luck finding Shagga. Bronn tells Tyrion that the Stone Crows remain in the Kingswood, with Shagga growing fond of the area. The burned men, led by Timett, returned home with all the spoils they collected from Stannis' camp. Chella and a few black ears appeared at the river gate, but the Red Cloaks drove them away as the people of King's Landing hurled filth and shouted in mockery. Tyrion resents the ungrateful Kingslanders, knowing the Black Ears sacrificed themselves for them. While he was medicated, his allies deserted him. He orders Bronn to speak to Cersei, noting Joffrey was unharmed and she no longer needs a hostage, as she had promised to free Alalea. Bronn confirms that Alalea was freed 8 or 9 days ago, but only after being flogged. Alarmed, Tyrion sits up, disregarding the sharp pain in his shoulder, and presses for details. Bronn reveals that Alalea was bound to a post, whipped in the yard, and then cast out of the gate, naked and bleeding. Tyrion reflects on how Alalea had been learning to read. The scar across his face pulls tight as his anger builds. Although she was she was also brave and innocent, qualities Tyrion had rarely encountered. She had only served as a cover for Shae, and he hadn't considered the danger that would put her in. He recalls promising to retreat Tommen as Cersei had treated Alalea, and the thought makes him feel nauseous. He questions how he could punish an 8-year-old boy, but realizes if he doesn't, Cersei will win. Bronn bluntly informs Tyrion that Tommen is no longer under his control. Once Cersei discovered Jacelyn Bywater was dead, she dispatched the Kettleblacks to retrieve Tommen, and not a single person at Roseby had the courage to defy them. The news strikes Tyrion, but he feels a slight relief, as he likes Tommen. Frustrated, he reminds Bronn that the Kettleblacks were supposed to be loyal to him. Bronn clarifies that they had been, if Tyrion outpaid the Queen. However, Cersei upped the stakes by knighting Osney and Osfrid after the battle, even though no one witnessed them in combat. Tyrion bitterly thinks that his hirelings have turned on him, his friends have been punished and disgraced, and he is left helpless. He had believed he won the battle, but now questions if this is what victory feels like. He then asks Bronn if the rumors about Renly's ghost driving away Stannis are true. Bronn smirks, explaining that in the taverns and brothels, plenty of people claim they witnessed Lord Renly slaying foes. Since much of Stannis' army had once followed Renly, they quickly switch sides at the sight of him. Tyrion grimly reflects that after all his careful strategies, the raid, the burning ships, and the wound that tore his face apart, he had been outdone by a corpse. He then asks how Stannis managed to get away. Bronn explains that the Lyseni galleys had stayed offshore, beyond the reach of Tyrion's chain. When the battle turned against Stannis, they sailed to the shore and rescued as many men as they could. In the end, men were even fighting each other for a place aboard. Tyrion asks about Robb Stark's actions, and Bronn tells him that some of Robb's men are raiding toward Duskendale, with Lord Tarly being sent to deal with them. Bronn briefly considers joining Tarly as he's known to be a good soldier who shares the spoils generously. The thought of losing Bronn unsettles Tyrion, and he insists that Bronn stay, reminding him he's captain of the Hand's Guard. Bronn quickly points out that Tyrion is no longer the Hand. His father is. Tyrion then asks about the men he had hired, to which Bronn explains that some were killed at the Winch Towers, while the rest were paid off and dismissed by Sir Kevan. Irritated, Tyrion sarcastically remarks on his uncle's generosity before asking if Bronn has lost his desire for gold. Bronn assures him that this isn't the case, and Tyrion reveals that he still needs his services. Tyrion then inquires about Sir Mandon Moore, and Bronn humorously responds that Sir Mandon drowned. Tyrion, tracing his scar, comments that he owes Sir Mandon a debt, but knows very little about the man. Bronn responds that Sir Mandon of the Kingsguard had lifeless eyes like a fish, questioning what more there is to learn. Tyrion replies that he needs to find out everything. Internally, he's searching for proof that Sir Mandon had been working with Cersei, but keeps his suspicions to himself. He asks Bronn to help him up, saying it's time to face his father and let them see him. Bronn mocks Tyrion, calling him a pretty sight. Tyrion asks if the pretty Margaery Tyrell has arrived in King's Landing. Bronn replies that she hasn't yet, but the City Watch is already infatuated with her. The Tyrells have been transporting food to King's Landing from Highgarden and distributing it on her behalf. Hundreds of wagons arrive each day. Tyrell men, marked by golden roses on their doublets, swagger through the streets getting free wine. Bronn adds that women, whether wives, widows, or otherwise, are offering themselves to any young man wearing a golden rose. Tyrion feels bitter resentment as he thinks about how the people spit on him while celebrating the Tyrells. Tyrion struggles out of bed and shouts for Podrick, who rushes in and obliges in helping dress Tyrion. The pain is great, and Tyrion drinks dream wine to numb it. Pod helps support Tyrion as they go through the castle. A serving girl sees Tyrion and her eyes widen with shock as if she had seen a ghost. Tyrion imagined her running off to spread the news that the dwarf had come back from the dead, looking even more hideous than before. Maegor's Holdfast, the most secure part of the Red Keep, is a fortress within a fortress, surrounded by a spiked dry moat. When Tyrion arrives at the door, the drawbridge has already been raised for the night. Sir Meryn Trant, in his Kingsguard uniform, stands guard. Tyrion orders him to lower the bridge. Sir Meryn, ever loyal to Cersei, reminds him that the Queen has commanded the bridge be raised at night. Tyrion, unfazed, replies that the Queen is asleep and he has business with his father. The mention of Lord Tywin's name carries enough weight to force Sir Meryn to give the order, and the drawbridge is lowered. Across the moat, Sir Osmond Kettleback stands watch and smiles when he sees Tyrion approaching. He asks if Tyrion is feeling stronger, to which Tyrion sarcastically replies that he feels great and can hardly wait for the next battle. Tyrion and Pod arrive at the winding stairs, and he gazes at them with frustration. He knows that climbing them alone would be impossible. He requests Bronn to lift him, silently hoping no one is around to witness it or spread rumors of the dwarf being lifted like a child. The outer courtyard is filled with tents and pavilions. Podrick points out that the tents belong to Tyrell soldiers as well as men from Lord Rowan and Lord Redwyn. Since there isn't enough space in the castle, some of them take lodging in the city's inns. They've all gathered for the king's wedding. Podrick then asks if Tyrion to attend Joffrey's wedding. Inside the Tower of the Hand, they meet Sir Adam Marbrand, the head of the City Watch, coming down the turnpike stair. He greets Tyrion warmly, relieved to see him standing, and mentioned hearing rumors of his death. Tyrion cuts him off, joking about a grave being dug for him. He then asked if Sir Adam's new role deserved congratulations or condolences. Sir Adam grins, acknowledging that both are fitting, as loss and desertion have severely reduced his numbers to 4,400 men. He adds that only the gods and Littlefinger can possibly figure out how to keep paying such a large force, but Cersei has strictly forbidden him from releasing any of them. Tyrion silently reflects that Cersei is still anxious, even though the battle is over and the gold cloaks are of no use to her now. He listens as Sir Adam explains that Lord Tywin wasn't in a good mood, believing that 4,400 guardsmen should be enough to find one missing squire. However, Tyrion's cousin Tyrek remains unaccounted for. Tyrek, the 13-year-old son of Tyrion's late uncle Tygert, disappeared during the riot, shortly after marrying Lady Ermesand, an infant and the last heir of House Hayford. Tyrion thinks that she is likely the first bride in the Seven Kingdoms to be widowed before she has weaned. He admits that he also failed to locate Tyrek. Bronn, blunt as usual, says Tyrek is probably feeding worms, noting that even Ironhand and the eunuch had no luck finding him. Sir Adam, showing distaste for Bronn's comment, insists that Lord Tywin won't rest until Tyrek is found, dead or alive. He then informs Tyrion that his father is in the Solar before leaving. Bronn pushes open the entrance, revealing Lord Tywin seated near the window, writing under the faint glow of a lamp, potentially writing letters meant for the Red Wedding. The sound of the door catches Tywin's attention, and he calmly sets down his pen, acknowledging Tyrion. Tyrion, leaning on his cane, lets go of Podrick and shuffles forward, commenting that he is pleased to be remembered. Immediately, he senses something is wrong. Lord Tywin addresses Bronn and Podrick, telling them to wait outside until their discussion is finished. Bronn gives the hand a borderline insolent glance but bows and steps out, with Podrick following. Tyrion is left alone with his father after the door closes behind him. Even though the windows are shut, the coldness in the room is unmistakable. Tyrion wonders what kind of lies Cersei has been feeding their father. Tywin suggests for Tyrion to sit and questioning the wisdom of leaving his bed. Aware of his father's disdain for weakness, Tyrion replies that he's grown weary of resting. He takes a chair nearby, making a sarcastic remark about how he was moved to a dark, crumpled cell while he was near death. Tywin explains that the Red Keep is filled with wedding visitors and reassures Tyrion that more suitable quarters will be provided once they depart. Tyrion inquires about the wedding schedule, and Tywin responds that Joffrey and Margaery are set to wed on the first day of the new year, signaling the beginning of a new century. Tywin says, "Did you come here just to complain of your bedchamber and make your lame japes? I have important letters to finish." Important letters, to be sure. Ironically, these letters are really important for the Red Wedding. Tywin says, "Some battles are won with swords and spears, others with quills and ravens. Spare me these coy reapproaches, Tyrion. I visited your sickbed as often as Maester Balabar would allow it, when you seemed like to die. Though the wound is ghastly enough, I'll grant you. What madness possessed you? The foe was at the gates with a battering ram. If Jaime had led the sort, you'd call it valor. Jaime would never be so foolish as to remove his helm in battle. I trust you killed the man who cut you?" "Oh, the wretched is dead enough," though it had been Podrick Payne who'd kill Sir Mandon. "A dead enemy is a joy forever," Tyrion said blithely, though Sir Mandon was not his true enemy. The man had no reason to want him dead. He was only a catspaw. "Why are you here in the city, father?" he asked. "Shouldn't you be off fighting Lord Stannis or Robb Stark or someone?" "And the sooner, the better. Until Lord Redwyne brings his fleet up, we lack the ships to sail to Dragonstone. It makes no matter. Stannis Baratheon's sun set on the Blackwater. As for Stark, the boy is still in the west, but a large force of Northernmen under Halman Talhart and Robert Glover are descending towards Duskendale. I've sent Lord Tarly to meet them, while Sir Gregor drives up the King's Road to cut off their retreat. Talhart and Glover will be caught between them, with a third of Stark's strength." Duskendale? There was nothing at Duskendale worth such a risk. Had the young wolf finally blundered? "It's nothing you need trouble yourself with. Your face is pale as death, and there's blood seeping through your dressings. Say what you want and take yourself back to bed." What I want? His throat felt raw and tight. What did he want? "Pod tells me that Littlefinger's been made Lord of Harrenhal." An empty title, so long as Roose Bolton holds the castle for Robb Stark. Yet Lord Baelish was desirous of the honour. He did us good service in the matter of the Tyrell marriage. A Lannister pays his debts. The Tyrell marriage had been Tyrion's notion, in point of fact, but it would seem crass to try to claim that now. "The title may not be as empty as you think," he warned. "Littlefinger does nothing without good reason. Be that as it may, you said something about paying debts, I believe. And you want your own reward, is that it? Very well. What is it that you would have of me? Lands, castle, some office? A little bloody gratitude would make a nice start." Lord Tywin stared at him, unblinking. Murmurs and monkeys require applause. So did Ares, for that matter. You did as you were commanded, and I am sure it was to the best of your ability. No one denies the part you played. The part I played? What nostrils Tyrion had left must surely have flared. "I saved your bloody city, it seems to me." "Most people seem to feel it was my attack on Lord Stannis' flank that turned the tide of battle. Lords Tyrell, Rowan, Redwyne, and Tarly fought nobly as well, and I'm told it was your sister Cersei who set the pyromancers to making the wildfire that destroyed the Baratheon fleet. While all I did was get my nose hairs trimmed, is that it?" Tyrion could not keep the bitterness out of his voice. "Your chain was a clever stroke and crucial to our victory. Is that what you wanted to hear? I am told we have you to thank for our Dornish alliance as well. You may be pleased to learn that Marcella has arrived safely at Sunspear. Sir Ares Oakheart writes that she has taken a great liking to Princess Arianne, and that Prince Trystane is enchanted with her. I mislike giving House Martell a hostage, but I suppose that could not be helped." "We'll have our own hostage," Tyrion said. A council seat was also part of the bargain. Unless Prince Doran brings an army when he comes to claim it, he'll be putting himself in our power. "Would that a council seat were all Martell came to claim," Lord Tywin said. "You promised him vengeance as well. I promised him justice. Call it what you will, it still comes down to blood. Not an item in short supply, surely. I splashed through lakes of it during the battle." Tyrion saw no reason not to cut to the heart of the matter. "Or have you grown so fond of Gregor Clegane that you cannot bear to part with him?" "Sir Gregor has his uses, as did his brother. Every lord has need of a beast from time to time. A lesson you seem to have learned, judging from Sir Bronn and those clansmen of yours." Tyrion thought of Timett, Shagga, Chella, and Bronn most of all. "The woods are full of beasts," he reminded his father. "The alleyways as well." "True. Perhaps other dogs would hunt as well. I shall think on it. If there is nothing else..." "You have important letters." "Yes." Tyrion rose on unsteady legs, closed his eyes for an instant as a wave of dizziness washed over him, and took a shaky step towards the door. Later, he would reflect that he should have taken a second, and then a third. Instead, he turned. "What do I want, you ask? I'll tell you what I want. I want what is mine by rights. I want Casterly Rock." His father's mouth grew hard. "Your brother's birthright." "The knights of the Kingsguard are forbidden to marry, to father children, and to hold land. You know that as well as I. The day Jaime put on that white cloak, he gave up his claim to Casterly Rock. but never once have you acknowledged it. It's past time. I want you to stand up before the realm and proclaim that I am your son and your lawful heir." Lord Tywin's eyes were a pale green flecked with gold, as luminous as they were merciless. "Casterly Rock," he declared in a flat, cold, dead tone. And then, never. The word hung between them, huge, sharp, poisoned. "I knew the answer before I asked," Tyrion said. 18 years since Jaime joined the King's Guard, and I never once raised the issue. I must have known. I must have always known. Why? He made himself ask, though he knew he would rue the question. You ask that. You, who killed your mother to come into the world. You are an ill-made, devious, disobedient, spiteful little creature full of envy, lust, and low cunning. Men's laws give you the right to bear my name and display my colors, since I cannot prove that you are not mine. To teach me humility, the gods have condemned me to watch you waddle about wearing that proud lion that was my father's sigil, and his father's before him. But neither gods nor men shall ever compel me to let you turn Casterly Rock into your house. Or house? Tyrion ground his teeth together and said, "Cersei told you about Alalea? Is that her name? I confess I cannot remember the names of all your Who was the one you married as a boy? Tysha." He spat out the answer defiant. "And that camp follower on the Green Fork. Why do you care?" he asked, unwilling to speak Shay's name in his presence. "I don't. No more than I care if they live or die. It was you who had Alalea whipped. It was not a question. Your sister told me your threats against my grandson." Lord Tywin's voice was colder than ice. "Did she lie?" Tyrion would not deny it. "I made threats, yes, to keep Alalea safe, so the Kettleblacks would not misuse her. To save her virtue, you threatened your own house, your own kin. Is that the way of it? You were the one who taught me that a good threat is often more telling than a blow. Not that Joffrey hasn't tempted me sore a few hundred times. If you're so anxious to whip people, start with him. But Tommen, why would I harm Tommen? He's a good lad and my own blood. As was your mother." Lord Tywin rose abruptly to tower over his dwarf son. "Go back to your bed, Tyrion, and speak to me no more of your rights to Casterly Rock. You shall have your reward, but it shall be one I deem appropriate to your service and station. And make no mistake, this was the last time I will suffer you to bring shame onto House Lannister. You are done with The next one I find in your bed, I'll hang." So, it would be interesting to think that the letters Tywin is writing in these chapters would eventually lead to the Red Wedding, since he tells Tyrion some battles are won by quills and ravens. Also, Helman Talhart and Robert Glover are marching on Duskendale, which is a Roose Bolton plot to weaken all northern forces loyal to Robb Stark. Also, the Kettleblack brothers that Cersei hired and later started working for Tyrion never actually worked for Tyrion, but Littlefinger. However, they will go on to stop working for Littlefinger later. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 5. Davos I. Davos is stranded on an island. He sees a sail grow in the distance. Dying feels simpler to him. He could retreat into his shelter, let the vessel drift past, and wait for death to claim him. He has been there for days. Each morning he wakes weaker, telling himself it won't be much longer before he perishes. Davos struggles with fever and thirst, knowing seawater would kill him, but he's nearly desperate enough to try. But a storm saved him. Starvation will also be the death of him, for the island is barely more than a desolate spire. Sometimes on low tides, crabs wash up ashore and painfully bite his fingers before he smashes them on the stones. He then sips the meat and guts out of them. However, now a sail has appeared, just a tiny dot in the distance, but becoming larger with time. The vessel is coming towards him, unless it veers off soon. It will sail close enough for him to shout from his hideaway. It could mean rescue, if he even wants it. He isn't sure he does. As tears blur his sight, Davos questions why he should go on. Dale, Allard, Marek, Mathos are gone, and maybe Devon too. He wonders how a father survives losing so many sons. He feels desolate. Davos and his crew had sailed up the Blackwater Rush, in the second line of battle between Dale's Wraith and Allard on the Lady Maria. His third son, Marek, served as the oar master on the Fury, stationed in the center of the first line, while Mathos assisted as his father's second. Under the shadow of the Red Keep, Stannis Baratheon's warships clashed with King Joffrey's smaller fleet in battle. And then a deafening roar erupted as green flames engulfed them. Mathos had been beside him on the deck of the Black Betha when the ship suddenly lifted from the water. Davos was thrown into the river, flailing as the current spun him around. Upriver, flames tore at the sky, rising 50 feet high. He saw the Black Betha in flames, the Fury ablaze, and a dozen other ships burning. Men, set alight, leapt into the water to drown. The Wraith and Lady Maria shattered from the wildfire. Looking for them was impossible as the mouth of the river drew near, obstructed by a huge iron chain lifted by the Lannisters. The father protects his children, but Davos led his sons into flames. Dale left his wife childless. Allard's woman in Old Town, King's Landing, and Braavos will mourn. Mathos will never captain his dream ship, and Marek will never become a knight. Davos is overwhelmed with guilt. He contemplates retreating into his cave and letting himself die quietly, believing he deserves to be forgotten. The vessel is closing in. In mere moments it would sail by, and he could finally die quietly. Davos reaches for the familiar leather pouch around his neck, but it is gone. Nonetheless, he cries out and waves his frail arms, frantically trying to catch the ship's attention. He calls out again, pleading for help. A crewman on the forward deck notices him and gestures, drawing the attention of other sailors who gather at the rail to gawk. Soon after, the galley's canvas is lowered, oars extend, and she swivels towards his craggy perch. Too massive to come nearer, the ship halts about 30 yards away and deploys a small boat. Davos grips the rock, watching it slowly advance. 4 men paddle, while a 5th positions himself at the front. As they approach, demanding to know who he is. Davos, struggling to speak, answers that he was in the battle, a captain and a knight. The man in the boat inquires which king he serves. Davos realizes the galley might belong to Joffrey, and uttering the wrong name could condemn him. Then he notices the stripped hull. It's Lyseni, Salador San's ship. The mother, in her compassion, must have sent her. Now he knows Stannis survives. He still has a king, other sons, and a faithful wife. He ponders how he could have forgotten. With renewed determination, Davos shouts back that he serves King Stannis. The man in the boat replies that they do as well. So literally nothing happens in this chapter except explaining how Davos survived. The same way how the last chapter essentially existed just to explain how Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie survived escaping from Harrenhal. I also preferred in the TV show how Davos didn't know if the ship belonged to Stannis or Joffrey, so when they ask him which king he serves, it really puts his loyalty to the test. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 6. Sansa I. Sansa keeps rereading the invitation, noticing how her stomach knots each time. She questions why Margaery Tyrell, now a queen who is adored by everyone, would want to dine with her, the daughter of a traitor. Sansa considers that perhaps Margaery is curious, wanting to assess the rival she replaced. Sansa also wonders if Margaery resents her or believes she holds any ill feelings towards her. From the fortress ramparts, Sansa observes Margaery Tyrell and her group making their ascent up Aegon's Peak. At the King's Gate, Joffrey greets his future wife, and together they ride side by side through jubilant crowds. Clad in shimmering golden armor, Joffrey rides next to Margaery. She's 16, slim and gorgeous, with chestnut hair and eyes. The crowd shouts her name, raises their children for her to bless, and tosses petals beneath her steed. Her mother and grandmother follow closely in an ornate carriage. Dragged from her horse by the same commoners who might have ended her life without the hound's intervention, Sansa ponders how she's done nothing to provoke their animosity, much like Margaery Tyrell has done nothing to gain their admiration. She speculates whether Margaery seeks her favor as well, carefully reviewing the invitation, which seems to be in Margaery's personal handwriting. Sansa questions if Margaery wants her consent. She contemplates whether Joffrey could be behind the invitation, which unsettles her. If Joffrey has a hand in it, she dreads he may have arranged a wicked scheme to disgrace her before Margaery. Sansa remembers the time Joffrey commanded the Kingsguard to disrobe her, only for his uncle Tyrion to intervene. Now, though, she realizes the imp won't be able to defend her. Sir Dontos had vowed to aid Sansa's escape, but only on the night of Joffrey's wedding. The preparations had been meticulously arranged. Her former knight-turned-jester reassured her, leaving her with no choice but to persist and tally the remaining days, and now to dine with her successor. Sansa contemplates whether she's being too harsh towards Margaery. Perhaps the request was simply a gesture of goodwill, an act of politeness. Maybe it was merely a dinner. Yet this was the Red Keep. If Sansa has absorbed any lesson here, it was distrust. Still, Sansa realizes she must comply. She is now merely the cast-off daughter of a traitor and the dishonored sibling of a rebellious lord. Declining the future queen of Joffrey isn't something she can afford. She longs for the hound's presence. On the evening of the battle, Sandor Clegane had appeared in her chambers to offer her escape from the capital, but she denied him. Occasionally, when she can't sleep, she muses if she made a mistake. She keeps his soiled pale cloak stored in a wooden chest under her warm silks, though she isn't sure why. People say the hound lost his bravery, becoming so drunk during the fight that the imp had to command his troops. Yet Sansa grasps the truth. She understands the tale behind his scarred face. His only terror is fire. The night the wildfire set the waters ablaze and engulfed the sky with emerald flames, even within the fortress, Sansa had been fearful. She can barely envision what it must have been like outside. Letting out a sigh, Sansa drafts a polite response to Margaery Tyrell, accepting the invitation. On the evening of their dinner, a different member of the Kingsguard arrives to escort her. Sir Loras Tyrell, standing at her doorway, quickens Sansa's pulse slightly. This is the closest Sansa has been to him since his return to King's Landing, where he leads the front of his father's forces. For a brief moment, she is at a loss for words, but eventually remarks on how charming Sir Loras looks. He gives her a puzzled smile, acknowledging her kindness and complimenting her beauty, while mentioning that his sister is eagerly waiting for her. Sansa replies that she has been looking forward to the dinner as well. Loras confirms that both Margaery and his grandmother are eager for the meal, then gently takes her arm and guides her towards the stairs. Surprised, Sansa asks about his grandmother, struggling to walk, talk, and think simultaneously while Sir Loras holds her arm. Loras explains that Lady Olenna will also be attending. Still a bit flustered, Sansa refers to Olenna as the Queen of Thorns, which Loras confirms with a laugh. He advises her not to use that name in his grandmother's presence unless she wants to provoke a sharp response. Sansa blushes. She briefly wonders if she really is as foolish as Cersei Lannister claims. In desperation, she tries to think of something witty or captivating to say, but her thoughts abandon her. She nearly tells him how handsome he is again before recalling she has already said that. Loras is undeniably attractive. He seems taller than when they first crossed paths, though still slender and graceful. And Sansa has never encountered anyone with such mesmerizing eyes. She quickly reminds herself that he is no longer a boy, but a man fully grown, and a knight of the Kingsguard. In her eyes, he appears even more striking in white compared to the green and gold of House Tyrell. Sir Baelor Swan holds the entrance of Maegor's as they pass through. Past the spiked trench, around 24 men engage in drills with blades and shields. Osney's brother, Sir Osfrid, harshly strikes the squire Morris Slint. Meanwhile, Garland Tyrell defends himself against 3 adversaries. As they observe, he strikes one of them across the head, rendering him unconscious. Loras explains that Garland frequently practices with multiple challenges because during combat it's rare to face a single opponent, and he prefers to be prepared. Sansa remarks on his bravery, and Loras commends his brother, adding that Garland surpasses him with the sword, although he excels with the lance. Sansa remarks about how he rode at the Hand's tourney and how he gave her a red rose while offering white roses to the other girls. The memory makes her blush as she remembers him saying that no victory could compare to her beauty. Loras, with a humble smile, responds that he was simply speaking the truth. However, Sansa realizes that Loras doesn't remember her, the rose, or any of it. He's simply being polite. She had been convinced it all meant something, especially the red rose instead of a white one. Desperately, she reminds him that it happened after he unhorsed Sir Robar Royce. Loras removes his hand from her arm, explaining that he killed Robar at Storm's End, his voice filled with sadness, not pride. Sansa recalls hearing rumors about it, but had briefly forgotten. She mentions Renly's death, sympathizing with Margaery, but Loras, his tone tight, responds that Margaery wasn't there to witness it. She attempts to console him, but Loras coolly touches the hilt of his sword, ending the conversation by stating there's no use in discussing the dead. His abrupt change in tone leaves Sansa shocked, and she falters through an apology. Loras reassures her that no offense was taken, yet the warmth in his voice is gone, and he does not offer his arm again. They climb the winding stairs in growing silence. Sansa regrets bringing up Sir Robar, feeling she's ruined everything. She considers apologizing again, but realizes any further words would likely make the situation worse. Lord Mace Tyrell and his company are staying in the Maiden Vault, near the Royal Sept, a building named after King Baelor the Blessed, who confined his sisters there to avoid temptation. Outside the doors stand 2 guards, whom Sansa notices are twins. Intrigued, she asks Sir Loras about them, momentarily forgetting about her discomfort. Loras explains that the guards are his grandmother's personal protectors, named Eric and Arik by their mother, though his grandmother calls them left and right because she can't tell them apart. The 2 guards open the doors, and Margaery Tyrell steps out to greet them. She warmly welcomes Sansa, who kneels before her future queen. Margaery encourages her to rise, asking to be called by her name and requesting permission to address Sansa in the same way. After Loras helps her up, Margaery gives him a sisterly kiss and dismisses him before taking Sansa's hand, leading her inside, mentioning that her grandmother is waiting. Around a long table sit several women, among them Margaery's family and a few other noble ladies. Sansa only recognizes Lady Alaray, Lord Tyrell's dignified wife, while Margaery introduces the rest of the group, many of whom are unfamiliar to Sansa. Margaery introduces Sansa to Lady Olenna, seated at the head of the table. Lady Olenna, small and elderly, invites Sansa to kiss her on the cheek, playfully calling her own family a foolish flock of hens. Lady Olenna then mentions that she had once known Sansa's grandfather, Lord Rickard, though only briefly. Sansa mentions that her grandfather died before she was born. Lady Olenna acknowledges this and adds that Sansa's Tully grandfather, Lord Hoster, is also near death, sympathizing with Sansa for her losses. Sansa in turn expresses her sadness over Lord Renly's death, calling him Galliant. Margaery thanks her for the kind words, but Lady Olenna dismisses Renly as clean and charming, but mocking him for believing such traits made him a suitable king. She notes that the Baratheons' odd ideas likely come from their Targaryen blood. Margaery defends Renly as brave and gentle, while Olenna remarks that Loras is skilled at jousting but not wise. Olenna humorously adds that she wished she could have knocked sense into Mace Tyrell, drawing a light scolding from Lady Alleray, which Olenna dismisses. Margaery asks her grandmother to watch her words, concerned about what Sansa might think. Lady Olenna turns to Sansa, remarking that she had warned her family that Renly had no real claim to the throne, as Robert had 2 sons and Stannis was older. She reflects on how the Tyrells were once only stewards until Aegon the Dragon conquered the Reach, and their claim to Highgarden remained shaky, much like the Florents argue. Despite that, her son Mace dreams of seeing his grandson on the Iron Throne, which makes him swell with pride. Olenna humorously suggests that her son should adopt the pufferfish as his sigil. She reflects on how they, the Tyrell, should have avoided the whole situation, but after Mace crowned Renly, it was too late. She then turns to Sansa, asking for her thoughts on the matter. Sansa, feeling flustered, struggles to respond and manages to mention the Tyrell's descent from Garth Greenhand. Lady Olenna quickly dismisses it, noting that many noble houses make the same claim. Lady Alleray steps in, offering food, including lemon cakes, which Sansa admits she loves. Lady Olenna mentions that they already know, thanks to Varys. Unimpressed by the change of subject, Olenna humorously comments on Varys and eunuchs, saying they're just men with the useful parts removed. She then insists on bringing the food and invites Sansa to sit beside her and calls all men fools, especially kings. She then asks Margaery to summon Butterbumps to cheer up Sansa, while lightly scolding the others to sit. Butterbumps, a large jester dressed in green and yellow feathers, arrives before the food, cartwheeling into the hall and vaulting onto the table. As food is served, Lady Olenna chats with Sansa, calling her son Mace an oaf, much like her late husband, Lord Luthor, who died by riding his horse off a cliff. She warns that Mace is now making the same mistake with the Lannisters, comparing them to lions, which are easy to mount but difficult to get away from. She advises Sansa to raise her future sons with more discipline and laments that rulers should listen to their mothers more often to do better. Realizing her mouth is agape once more, Sansa quickly eats some broth while the women laugh at Butterbump's antics. Lady Olenna abruptly asks for the truth about Joffrey, wondering if he has mistreated Sansa. Her grip tightens on the spoon as panic rises, and Sansa struggles to respond. Sansa glances around nervously as Butterbumps entertains the women and doesn't answer. The hall buzzes with the sounds of dinner. Lady Olenna grows impatient and presses Sansa for answers about Joffrey's character. Sansa, recalling Sir Dontus's warning, nervously lies, describing Joffrey as brave and handsome. Olenna asks if Joffrey is truly kind, chivalrous, and capable of protecting Margaery. When Sansa repeats that Joffrey is comely, Olenna replies that appearances mean little, after demanding cheese from a passing servant. "The cheese will be served after the cakes, my lady." Olenna replies, "The cheese will be served when I want it served, and I want it served now." The old woman turned back to Sansa. "Are you frightened, child? No need for that. We're only women here. Tell me the truth. No harm will come to you." "My father always told the truth," Sansa spoke quietly, but even so, it was hard to get the words out. "Lord Eddard, yes, he had that reputation, but they named him traitor and took his head off even so." The old woman's eyes bore into her, sharp and bright as the points of swords. "Joffrey," Sansa said. "Joffrey did that. He promised me he would be merciful and cut my father's head off. He said that was mercy, and he took me up on the walls and made me look at it. The head. He wanted me to weep, but..." She stopped abruptly and covered her mouth. "I've said too much. Oh gods, be good. They'll know. They'll hear. Someone will tell on me." "Go on." It was Margaery who urged, Joffrey's own queen-to-be. Sansa did not know how much she had heard. "I can't." "What if she tells him? What if she tells? He'll kill me for certain then, or give me to Sir Ilan. I never meant. My father was a traitor, my brother as well. I have the traitor's blood. Please don't make me say more." "Calm yourself, child," the Queen of Thorns commanded. "She's terrified, grandmother. Just look at her." The old woman called to Butterbumps. "Fool, give us a song. A long one, I should think. The Bear and the Maiden Fair will do nicely." "It will," the huge jester replied. "Shall I sing it standing on my head, my lady?" "Will that make it sound better?" "No." "Stand on your feet then. We wouldn't want your hat to fall off." "As my lady commands." Butterbumps bowed low, let loose an enormous belch, then bellowed the Bear and the Maiden Fair. Lady Olenna squirmed forward to Sansa. "Now, child, the truth. What sort of man is this Joffrey, who calls himself Baratheon, but looks so very Lannister?" Sansa felt as though her heart had lodged in her throat. The Queen of Thorns was so close she could smell the old woman's sour breath. Her gaunt, thin fingers were pinching her wrist. To her other side, Margaery was listening as well. A shiver went through her. "A monster," she whispered, so tremulously she could scarcely hear her own voice. "Joffrey is a monster. He lied about the butcher's boy and made father kill my wolf. When I displease him, he has the Kingsguard beat me. He's evil and cruel. My lady, it's so. And the queen as well." Lady Olenna Tyrell and her granddaughter exchanged a look. "Ah," said the old woman. "That's a pity." "Oh gods," thought Sansa, horrified. "If Margaery won't marry him, Joff will know that I'm to blame." "Please," she blurted, "don't stop the wedding." "Have no fear. Lord Pufffish is determined that Margaery shall be queen, and the word of a Tyrell is worth more than all the gold in Castle Rock. Sansa, would you like to visit Highgarden?" When Margaery Tyrell smiled, she looked very like her brother Loras. "All the autumn flowers are in bloom just now. My lord father always keeps singers at court. We have the best horses and pleasure boats to sail along the Mander. Do you hawk, Sansa?" "A little," she admitted. "You will love Highgarden as I do. I know it." Margaery brushed back a loose strand of Sansa's hair. "Once you see it, you'll never want to leave. And perhaps you won't have to." "Shush, child," the Queen of Thorns said sharply. "Sansa hasn't even told us that she would like to come for a visit." "Oh, but I would," Sansa said. Highgarden sounded like a place she had always dreamed of, like the beautiful magical court she had once hoped to find at King's Landing. "But the Queen," Sansa went on, "she won't let me go." "She will. Without Highgarden, the Lannisters have no more hope of keeping Joffrey on his throne. If my son the Lord Oath asks, she will have no choice but to grant his request." "Will he?" asked Sansa. "Will he ask?" Lady Olenna frowned. "I see no need to give him a choice. Of course, he has no hint of our true purpose." Sansa wrinkled her brow. "Our true purpose, my lady?" "To see you safely wed, child," the old woman said, as Butterbumps bellowed out the old song, "To my grandson." "Wed to Sir Loras? Oh." Sansa's breath caught in her throat. She remembered in white silk, so pure, innocent, beautiful. She could only imagine what it would be like to pull up his tunic and caress the smooth skin underneath, to stand on her toes and kiss him, to run her fingers through those thick brown curls and drown in his deep brown eyes. A flush crept up her neck. "Would you like that, Sansa?" asked Margaery. "I've never had a sister, only brothers. Oh, please say yes. Please say that you'll consent to marry my brother." The words came tumbling out of her. "Yes, I will. I would like that more than anything. To wed Sir Loras? To love him?" "Loras?" Lady Olenna sounded annoyed. "Don't be foolish, child. Kingsguard never wed. Didn't they teach you anything in Winterfell? We were speaking of my grandson Willis. He is a bit old for you, to be sure, but a dear boy for all that. Not the least bit oafish, an heir to Highgarden besides." Sansa felt dizzy. One instant her head was full of dreams of Loras, and the next they had all been snatched away. Willis. She said stupidly. "Courtesy is a lady's armor. You must not offend them. Be careful what you say." "I do not know Sir Willis. I have never had the pleasure, my lady. Is he as great a knight as his brothers?" "No," Margaery said. "He has never taken vows." Her grandmother frowned. "Tell the girl the truth. The poor lad is crippled, and that's the way of it. He was hurt as a squire, riding in his first tourney, Margaery confided. His horse fell and crushed his leg. That snake of a Dornishman was to blame, that Oberyn Martell, and his maester as well. Willis has a bad leg, but a good heart, said Margaery. He used to read to me when I was a little girl and draw me pictures of the stars. You will love him as much as we do, Sansa. When might I meet him? Asked Sansa hesitantly. Soon, promised Margaery. When you come to Highgarden, after Joffrey and I are wed, my grandmother will take you. I will, said the old woman, patting Sansa's hand and smiling a soft, wrinkly smile. I will indeed. Butterbumps roared the last line, leapt into the air, and came down on both feet with a crash that shook the wine cups on the table. The women laughed and clapped. I thought that dreadful song would never end, said the Queen of Thorns. But look, here comes my cheese. So this chapter is where we see the Tyrell scheme and the first real mention of Willis, who is an interesting book-only character that the show should have included. Also, it is really funny how Sansa thought so much of the rose Loras gave her when he completely forgot about it, which is again another unrequited love story which we see all over A Song of Ice and Fire. A Storm of Swords, Jon I. In a dim, cold world filled with the scent of pine and moss, Jon Snow observes numerous flicking lights, resembling another river along the bankside of the Milkwater. They move down the ridge silently, with only the clinking of Rattleshirt's bone armor breaking the stillness. Above, an eagle glides and Jon notices Ghost following them. 6 days earlier, the largest hound had attacked him from behind, but Ghost had reacted swiftly, causing the dog to retreat with a bloody flank. The rest of the pack keeps a cautious gap since then. Dressed entirely in black, Jon finds himself surrounded by the wildlings. Ygritte wears Qhorin Halfhand's cloak. Qhorin's helmet was claimed by Longspear, but it didn't fit him well, so he handed it to Ygritte. Rattleshirt carries Qhorin's bones along with the severed head of Eben, who had joined Jon to scout the Skirling Pass. Ygritte rides closely behind Jon, with Longspear ahead. The Lord of Bones has assigned them as his protectors. Jon notes that these are genuinely free folk because while Rattleshirt commands them, Ygritte and the others aren't afraid to speak their minds. The Lord of Bones warns Jon that he may have tricked the others, but he won't deceive Mance. He says Mance will instantly recognize the truth and kill him. After a long day on horseback, they set up camp and Ygritte sits beside Jon, her hood up and hands tucked for warmth. She says when Mance hears about his actions for Halfhand, he'll take Jon fast enough. Jon asks what Mance wants him for. She laughs, noting he isn't the first crow to come down from the wall and that deep down they all want freedom. Jon wonders if being free means he can leave. She confirms he can, but they will also be free to kill him. Ygritte adds that it's dangerous to be free, but most come to enjoy it. She places her gloved hand on his thigh. Jon mentally plans to see, hear, and learn, and then he will take the message back to the wall. The wildlings regard him as an oathbreaker, but deep down he is still a man of the Night's Watch. They cross the frozen Milkwater and meet Mance Raider's outriders. Jon sizes them up and identifies their leader as a stout blonde man wielding a large curved scythe. Jon instantly identifies him as the Weeper. The Black Brothers tell stories about him. He is one of the famous raiders alongside Rattleshirt, Harmer Dogshead, and Alfin Crowkiller. The Weeper asks the Lord of Bones about Jon and his wolf. Rattleshirt introduces Jon as a crow who crossed over. Longspear mentions that Jon killed Qhorin Halfhand with his wolf's help. Rattleshirt adds that Jon also dealt with Orell. The Weeper examines Jon closely and comments on his wolfish appearance. He decides to bring Jon to Mance, suggesting that Mance might keep him. He then turns his horse and rides off, followed by his riders. They navigate the Milkwater Valley, Longspear comments to Jon that the dogs aren't fond of his wolf. Jon replies that the dogs sense Ghost is not one of them. He reflects that he feels just as much an outsider among the wildlings. Cookfires line the river. At one of the cookfires, Jon observes men and women feathering arrows. Jon thinks about how those arrows are for all the people he cares about: the Night's Watch, his father's men, all of Winterfell, Deepwood Motte, and all the North. Yet not everything he observes is threatening. He notices women dancing, hears an infant wailing, and sees a small boy darting in front of his horse. In a clearing surrounded by towering pines, Rattleshirt and the others establish camp. Ygritte and Longspear are assigned to bring Jon to Mance for inspection. They continue, passing campfires and tents, with Ghost close behind. Jon has never seen so many wildlings. The camp stretches endlessly, resembling 100 encampments rather than one, each more exposed than the last. With insufficient defenses, no pits or sharpened stakes, only small groups of sentries patrol the borders. Jon notes that even though the wildlings have the numbers, the Night's Watch is disciplined. He then recalls his father's saying that in battles, discipline always triumphs over numbers. The king's tent is unmistakable. It is 3 times larger than the next biggest one Jon has seen, and he hears music coming from inside. Guards stand at the entrance of the tent. Upon spotting Ghost, one of the two lowers his spear and states that the wolf must remain. Jon orders Ghost to stay, and the direwolf sits. Longspear is instructed to watch the creature. Rattleshirt pulls open the tent and signals for Jon and Ygritte to enter. The tent feels hot and laden with haze. Once his vision adapts to the smoky crimson dimness, he discerns 6 figures, none of whom regard him. A dark youth and an appealing blonde woman share a cup of mead. Leaning over a fire is a pregnant woman cooking a couple of hens, while a silver-haired man in a ragged cloak sits cross-legged on a cushion, plucking a lute and performing a song about a Dornishman's wife. Jon is familiar with this song and thinks it's strange that it's being played beyond the wall so far away from Dorne. Rattleshirt takes off his discolored helm while he waits for the melody to conclude. Under his bone and leather armor, he appears small. Beside the fire, a stumpy but exceptionally wide man perches on a stool with heavy gold bracelets and a thick shirt of black chainmail that likely came from a deceased ranger. A few steps away, a more imposing and slender individual scowls at a map. The smooth-faced bold man might have been attractive if he had ears, but both are absent. Both the white-bearded man and the bold one are fighters. That is clear to Jon at a glance. These two are far more perilous than Rattleshirt. He contemplates which one of them is Mance Rayder. As the final notes of the Dornishman's wife finishes, the bold, earless man inquires about the presence of a crow among them. Rattleshirt replies that this was the black bastard who had dispatched Orell and is a bloody warg as well. The earless man states that they were meant to kill all the Night's Watch brothers. Ygritte clarifies that this one came over and slew Corran Halfhand. The earless man becomes enraged, inserting that Halfhand should have been his. He then asked Jon for his name. Jon stated that he is Jon Snow before calling him Your Grace, pondering whether he is expected to kneel as well. The earless man questions Jon's use of Your Grace, glancing at the large white bearded man, suggesting that Jon took him for a king. The bearded man laughs so hard that pieces of chicken scatter everywhere. He wipes the grease from his mouth and questions how anyone could consider a king without ears. His crown would simply fall down his neck. He grins at Jon, telling him to turn around, perhaps to find the king he is looking for. Jon looks behind him. The singer stands up. He introduces himself as Mance Rayder, placing the lute aside. He identifies Jon as Ned Stark's illegitimate son. Taken aback, Jon remains silent for a moment before managing to ask how Mance could know this. Mance Rayder replies that it's a story for another time and asks how Jon feels about the song. Jon states that he liked it and had heard it previously. Mance questions whether his Lord of Bones tells the truth, asking if Jon killed his old friend, the Half-Hound. Jon acknowledges he did. Mance expresses sorrow that the Shadow Tower will never appear as intimidating again. He admits that Qhorin was his foe, but also once his brother. He then wonders if he should express gratitude or resentment towards Jon for taking Qhorin's life, flashing Jon a teasing smile. The king beyond the wall appears far from regal, not even resembling a typical wildling. He is of average height, lacks any royal adornments, no crown, and is dressed in simple wool and leather. The only noticeable piece of clothing is his tattered black wool cloak, patched with faded red silk. Jon points out that Mance should be thankful for the death of his enemy, but resentful over the loss of his friend. The white-bearded man responds with booming approval, praising Jon's words. Mance Rayder agrees and calls Jon closer, explaining that the man Jon mistook him for is Styr, the Magna of Then. Explaining that in Old Tongue, Magna means Lord. Styr stares coldly at Jon. Turning to the white-bearded man, Mance introduces him as Tormund, but Tormund interrupts, demanding his full titles. Mance laughs and humorously lists Tormund's many names, including Giant's Bane, Hornblower, and Breaker of Ice. Satisfied, Tormund greets Jon, adding that while he is fond of wargs, he doesn't share the same sentiment for Starks. He continues by introducing Darla, the pregnant woman near the fire, and tells Jon to regard her as royalty since she carries his heir. He then presents Val, Darla's sibling, and Jarl, her current companion. Mance shifts his attention to Jon, requesting an explanation and asking where he has come from. Jon replies that he journeyed from Winterfell, passing through Castle Black. Without waiting for more details, Mance asks Rattleshirt how many were in Jon's group. Rattleshirt reports that 5 had been there, 3 are dead. Jon is present and 1 escaped by climbing a slope. Mance looks at Jon again, asking if it was truly just 5 or if there were more hidden men. Jon clarifies that there were 4 plus Qhorin Halfhand, who was equal to many men. Mance is satisfied but questions why Jon, a boy from Castle Black, would accompany rangers from the Shadow Tower. Jon responds that the Lord Commander assigned him to the Halfhand for experience. Styr, the Magna, frowns and asks why the Night's Watch would be exploring the Skirling Pass. Jon honestly responds that the villages they encountered were empty, with the free folk seeming to have disappeared. Mance confirms that not only the free folk had vanished, and asks Jon who informed them of the wildlings' location. Tormund interrupts, joking that it was probably Craster and reiterating his wish for Craster's death. Mance, annoyed, tells Tormund to think before he speaks, explaining that he knew it was Craster and was only testing Jon's honesty. Tormund, realizing his mistake, spits and jokes that this is why Mance is king, while he is not. He boasts that he is a better drinker, fighter, and singer than Mance, but Mance has more cunning. He also notes that Mance grew up as a crow, and these birds are known for their slyness. Mance then asks to speak with Jon privately and instructs Rattleshirt and the others to leave. Tormund, surprised, asks if he should also depart. Mance confirms. Tormund grumbles that he refuses to eat where he is not wanted, grabs another piece of chicken, stuffs it into his cloak, and exits while licking his fingers. The others follow, leaving only Darla behind. Mance Rayder invites Jon to sit, offering food, and mentions that Tormund left behind 2 birds for them. Jon accepts the meal with thanks, addressing Mance as Your Grace. Mance, amused by Jon's use of the title, notes that such formality is uncommon among the free folk and prefers to be called Mance. He offers Jon some mead, which Jon readily agrees to. As Darla serves the well-cooked birds, Jon eats with his hands, enjoying every bit of the meal. Mance acknowledges that Tormund was right about the Night's Watch being clever, but he warns Jon against attempting any tricks on him. Jon agrees and quickly stops himself from saying "Your Grace," ending up blurting out "Your Mance," which makes the king laugh. Mance then brings up the promise of explaining how he recognized Jon and asks if Jon had figured it out. Jon admits that he hadn't, so Mance explains that he had seen Jon's face on 2 prior occasions. At first, Jon is confused, but then he realizes that Mance had once been a brother of the Night's Watch. Mance confirms this, recalling a visit to Winterfell when Jon was a boy. He had been part of a group escorting Lord Commander Corgyle to meet Jon's father. Mance remembers seeing Jon and Robb building a large snow mound, waiting to prank someone who would walk beneath it. Jon laughs, recalling the incident, and mentions that Mance had promised not to reveal their mischief. Mance agrees, adding that he kept that particular promise. Jon recalls a mischievous memory of dumping snow on Fat Tom, their father's slowest guard, and how Tom chased them around the yard afterward until they were flushed. Shifting back to the conversation, Jon questions when he was seen a second time. The king beyond the wall responds lightly, mentioning King Robert's visit to Winterfell when Jon's father was made hand. Jon is shocked, but Mance explains how he heard of King Robert's arrival through the connection between the Night's Watch and the Free Folk. He had seized the opportunity to see King Robert and assess Benjen Stark, first ranger at the time. Jon, confused, asks him how he got past the wall. Mance remarks that while the wall can block an army, it won't stop a single person. He recounts sneaking past it near Long Barrow with a musical instrument and some coins, walking a few miles from the new gift before purchasing a horse. He managed to travel faster than King Robert, who was slowed down by his grand caravan. A day before reaching Winterfell, he joined Robert's traveling party, blending in with other mercenaries and knights looking for royal favor, using his songs to gain entry. On the evening Lord Eddard hosted Robert, he sat quietly at the back, enjoying the food and drink while observing the Kingslayer, the Imp, and Eddard's children with their wolves. Jon recalls the story of Bael the Bard, a tale that Ygritte had shared with him in the Frostfangs on the night he nearly ended her life. Mance acknowledges that Bael's boldness influenced his own actions, but clarifies that unlike Bael, he didn't abduct Jon's sisters. He mentions that Bael crafted and lived his own tales, whereas he only sings songs composed by greater men. Mance offers Jon more mead, which Jon politely declines, changing the direction of the discussion. Jon voices his concern over what would have occurred if Mance had been caught. Mance admits that Jon's father likely would have executed him, but adds that after dining at Eddard Stark's table, he would have been shielded by guest right, a law as old as the first men and as holy as a heart tree. Gesturing towards the remnants of their meal, Mance declares Jon to be under his protection as a guest for the time being. He then asks Jon outright if his betrayal of the Night's Watch was driven by fear or if there was another reason behind his decision. Jon realizes the dangerous position he is in, knowing that one misstep could lead to ruin. He reminds himself to weigh his words carefully and take a long drink of mead to gather his thoughts before responding. Jon proposes a mutual exchange. If Mance explains why he abandoned the Night's Watch, Jon will reveal why he made the same choice. Mance Radar grins, just as Jon expected. The king clearly enjoys hearing himself speak. Mance remarks that Jon has likely heard many tales about why he abandoned the watch. Jon replies that some claim it was for power, others for a woman, and some believe Mance has wildling heritage. Mance explains that the so-called wildling blood is the same blood as the first men, the same blood that flows in the Starks. As for a crown, he points out that he wears none. Jon then mentions seeing a woman, glancing towards Dalla. Mance pulls Dalla closer and assures Jon that she played no part in his leaving, as he only met her after departing from Jon's father's hold. He adds that unlike Corran Halfhand, who was stern, He is drawn to the pleasures of women, just like many men in the Night's Watch. He notes that many still serving have been with far more women than he has. Mance tells Jon to guess again. Jon thinks for a moment and then recalls that Corran had mentioned Mance's love for wildling songs. Mance agrees that this is closer to the truth, but not entirely right. He stands up, unfastens his cloak, and sweeps it across the bench, revealing that it was all for the cloak. Jon is surprised and questions whether it was really over something as simple as a cloak. Mance Rayder recounts that while on a ranging mission, his group hunted an elk, but the scent of blood attracted a shadow cat. Though he managed to drive it off, the animal shredded his cloak and wounded him badly. His companions, worried he might not survive, took him to a wildling village. The village's healer had passed away, but her daughter treated Mance's wounds, stitching him up and nursing him back to health. She also repaired his torn cloak, using scarlet silk from Ashai, which her grandmother had salvaged from a wrecked ship along the frozen shore. The silk had been her prized possession, and she gave it to him. Upon returning to the Shadow Tower, Mance was given a new black wool cloak to go along with his other black gear, boots, breeches, and armor, without any frays or red patches. So Denys Mallister sternly reminded him that the Night's Watch only wore black and suggested that his old cloak must be burned. Instead of accepting this, Mance left the next morning, seeking a place where he could wear whatever cloak he desired and enjoy the freedom not found at the Wall. Mance then shifts the focus to Jon, asking him to share his reason. Jon took another swallow of mead. There is only one tale that he might believe, Jon thinks. You say you were at Winterfell the night my father feasted King Robert. I did say it, for I was. Then you saw us all, Prince Joffrey and Prince Tommen, Princess Marcella and my brothers Robb and Bran and Rickon, my sisters Arya and Sansa. You saw them walk the center aisles with every eye upon them and take their seats at the table just below the dais where the king and queen were seated. I remember. And did you see where I was seated? He leaned forward. Did you see where they put the bastard? Mance Rayder looked at Jon's face for a long moment. I think we had best find you a new cloak, the king said, holding out his hand. So, this is completely different to the show, which had Jon wanting to fight for the side that fights for the living, which is a good motivation to add if you don't want to include that Mance Rayder was secretly at Winterfell for the royal visit. However, this chapter gives rise to the belief put forward by Preston Jacobs that Mance Rayder is the one who sent the Catspaw to kill Bran, since Robb tells us that the Catspaw had 90 silver stags in a leather bag buried beneath the straw. Meanwhile, in this chapter, Mance tells us, I took a lute and a bag of silver. Therefore, the logic goes that Mance Rayder paid the Catspaw in order to generate conflict between the Starks and the Lannisters, which would allow his wildling armies to breach the wall without fear of a Stark attack, since they would be too busy fighting in the south, which is precisely what happens. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 8. Daenerys I. Sailing on 3 ships sent by Illyroy, Daenerys watches her dragons circling in the cloudless sky. The Dothraki in her Khalasar refer to the sea as poison water. As the 3 ships set sail, Dany's blood riders fix their gazes on the shrinking coastline. With every wave, Irri and Jiqui, Dany's handmaids, clung tightly to the ship's rail, vomiting from seasickness. Most of her Khalasar remained below deck, choosing the uneasy presence of their anxious horses over the overwhelming sight of the endless sea. When a sudden storm struck 6 days into the journey, she could hear the panicked horses and the riders quietly muttering shaky prayers. Dany fears no storm though. She is known as Stormborn and entered the world during a violent storm on Dragonstone. The storm, remembered as one of the fiercest in Westeros, tore the castle's walls gargoyles and shattered her father's fleet into splinters. Stormy waters often surround the narrow sea, and Dani crossed it countless times as a girl, fleeing from one free city to another, always staying just ahead of the usurper's assassins. She loves the sea, watching the dolphins and listening to the sailors' stories. On a journey to Braavos, she wanted to be a sailor, but Viserys harshly reminds her that she is blood of the dragon. Dani reflects that Viserys was a fool about many things. If he had been more patient and wise, he would be the one sailing west to claim the throne that was rightfully his. Yet she sometimes misses him. Not the man he became towards the end, but the brother who once let her sleep beside him and shared stories of the Seven Kingdoms, dreaming of how great their lives would be when he gained his crown. The captain stands beside her, Captain Grolio, an old Pentoshi like his master Illyrio Mopatis, who was anxious about transporting 3 dragons on his vessel. 100 buckets of seawater hung from the rails, ready in case of fires. Initially, Grolio requested the dragons be caged, and Dani agreed to calm his worries, but their clear distress soon prompts her to release them. Aside from one minor fire, Captain Grolio now appreciates the dragons. The once scared but curious crew are now proud of their dragons. Everyone aboard watches them fly with fascination. Viserion has creamy scales, while Rhaegal is green and bronze. Both dragons circle the ships, competing to fly higher. Drogon is flying as well, though currently unseen, likely hunting far ahead or behind. Drogon is constantly ravenous and rapidly growing. Daenerys thinks that in a year or 2, he could be big enough to ride. For 6 days and nights they remain stranded without wind, and now a 7th day arrives with still no breeze to fill the sails. Luckily, 2 of the vessels dispatched by Magister Illyrio are merchant ships, each with 200 oars and strong crews to row. Ser Jorah Mormont joins Daenerys at the ship's bow and remarks that Drogon is missing again. Daenerys replies that they are the ones who are lost, and that Drogon dislikes their slow progress as much as she does. Curious, Daenerys asks how large Drogon will grow. Ser Jorah shares stories of dragons in the Seven Kingdoms that became so massive they could pull giant krakens from the ocean, imagining it would be an incredible sight. But Ser Jorah reminds her that these tales are simply myths, much like those about dragons living for 1,000 years. Still, curious, Daenerys asks how long dragons actually live. Ser Jorah explains that a dragon's natural lifespan is believed to be much longer than a man's, according to the songs. However, the dragons most familiar to the Seven Kingdoms were those of House Targaryen, bred for battle, and they perished in war. Whitebeard, the squire, interjects and explains that Balerion the Black Dread lived for 2 centuries, dying during the rule of Jaehaerys the Conciliator. He notes that dragons continue to grow if they have enough food and freedom. Daenerys asks Whitebeard to explain what he means by freedom. Whitebeard shares that her ancestors built the Dragon Pit in King's Landing, a large domed castle where royal dragons were housed. The Dragon Pit still stands in ruins atop the hill of Rhaenys. But the dragons that lived there never grew as large as their ancestors. The Maesters believe this was due to the confinement of walls and the dome above them. Ser Jorah disagrees and questions Whitebeard's knowledge of dragons. Whitebeard admits to knowing little, but recalls serving in King's Landing during the reign of King Aerys, when he walked beneath the dragon skulls that once lined the throne room. Daenerys remembers Viserys talking about those skulls, saying the usurper took them off the walls. She then asks Whitebeard if he ever met her father, King Aerys II, who died before she was born. Whitebeard mentions that no one ever truly knew Prince Rhaegar. However, he had the chance to see him in tournaments and often listened to him play his harp. Ser Jorah dismisses this, remarking that Whitebeard must have seen Rhaegar along with 1,000 others at some feast, and sarcastically suggests Whitebeard might next claim to have been his squire. Whitebeard clarifies he makes no such claims. He adds that Jon Connington was dear to Rhaegar, but Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, was his oldest friend. Daenerys recalls Viserys saying that Sir Arthur was the only knight in the realm who was their brother's equal. Whitebeard lowers his head, remarking that he has no right to challenge Prince Viserys' words. Daenerys corrects Whitebeard, saying that Viserys was a king, though he never ruled, and asks for clarification. Whitebeard's reply surprises her. She remembers Ser Jorah referring to Rhaegar as the last dragon and assumes Rhaegar must have been an unmatched warrior to deserve that title. Whitebeard admits that Rhaegar was a formidable fighter, but pauses. When Daenerys presses further, Whitebeard cautiously suggests that while Rhaegar was a powerful warrior, titles and words don't win battles. Ser Jorah bluntly states that swords win battles and that Rhaegar knew how to wield one. Whitebeard agrees, but adds that even the best warriors can be matched. He reflects on the many tournaments and wars he's witnessed, noting how unpredictable factors like terrain or even a change in the wind can determine victory. Glancing at Jorah, he hints that a lady's favor tied around an arm could also influence outcomes. Jorah, offended, warns Whitebeard to watch his words. Arstan had witnessed Ser Jorah compete at Lannisport, where Jorah triumphed in the tournament with a woman's favor bound to his arm. That woman was Lenesi of House Hightower, his second wife. Noble and stunning, but she had brought about his downfall and eventually abandoned him, leaving Jorah with painful memories. Daenerys softly rests her hands on Jorah's arms, asking him to show kindness, believing that Arstan didn't intend to offend. So Jorah reluctantly consents. Daenerys turns to Whitebeard, admitting she knows little about Rhaegar apart from the stories Viserys shared, noting that Viserys was just a child when their brother died. She asks what Rhaegar was truly like. After a brief pause, Whitebeard describes Rhaegar as capable and determined. He then shares a tale that Rhaegar, as a young boy, was exceptionally studious and showed little interest in playing with other children. His intelligence impressed the maesters, but knights would joke that he resembled Baelor the Blessed. Then one day, something Rhaegar read in his scrolls caused a profound change. He appeared in the yard one morning where knights were preparing for training and told Sir William Darry that he would need a sword and armor because he had to become a warrior. Daenerys, happy, comments that Rhaegar did indeed become a warrior. Whitebeard agrees before excusing himself to attend to Strong Belwas, who has just awakened. Daenerys looks toward the back of the ship and sees Strong Belwas, surprisingly quick for his size, making his way through the hold. Broad and scarred, he wears baggy pants. Belwas loudly declares his hunger and demands Whitebeard bring him food. Ser Jorah watches with concern, his rugged face showing unease. Once Whitebeard is out of earshot, Jorah warns Daenerys to be cautious of the old man's words. Daenerys replies that a queen must listen to everyone, as truth can be found in many voices. Jorah, still uneasy, insists that Whitebeard is deceiving her, noting that he's too old and articulate to be a squire serving Belwas, a eunuch. Daenerys admits that it does seem strange. Strong Belwas, a former slave trained in the combat arenas of Meereen, insisted that Magister Illyroy had dispatched him to safeguard her as she draws closer to Westeros. In Karth, the warlock Pyat Pri ordered a sorrowful man after her as revenge for the undying she incinerated in the House of Dust. Additionally, most of the Dothraki would likely be hostile to her. Khal Drogo's former followers now led their own khalasars and would not hesitate to attack her small group, capturing or killing them and dragging her back to Vaes Dothrak to join the Dosh Khaleen as one of the crones. Daenerys also wasn't sure if Xaro Xhoan, who had once desired her dragons, was a friend or foe. Then there was Quaithe, the mysterious woman in the red lacquer mask, whose cryptic advice left Daenerys uncertain whether she was a threat or merely a dangerous ally. Daenerys reflects on how Ser Jorah had saved her from the Poisoner and Arstan Whitebeard from the Manticore. Maybe with Beowulf's massive and powerful arms and the Ertac he wields, he will be her next protector against the threats to come. But with his childishness, he isn't the most reliable guardian. She knows that a time will come when, just as it was for Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters 300 years ago, her dragons will become her most powerful defenders. For now, they pose more danger than protection. As the only living dragons, they are a wonder, a source of fear, and priceless. As Daenerys feels a cool breeze stir her hair, the sails of the Lyrion begin to fill, and the wind continues steadily through the day, shifting into stronger gusts by sunset. Daenerys envisions the moment she first sees the land she is destined to rule, confident it will be the most beautiful sight of her life. As Balerion moves through the night, Daenerys is seated on her bunk in the captain's cabin, giving her dragons food. Captain Grolio has reminded her that even at sea, queens outrank captains. A knock sounds at the door, and Irri, who had been resting at the foot of the bed, gets up to answer. Daenerys, unprepared for a visitor and unclothed, pulls a blanket around herself. When she notices Ser Jorah standing under a lantern outside, she allows him in. Ser Jorah lowers his head as he enters, apologizing for disturbing Daenerys. She reassures him that she wasn't sleeping and invites him to watch. Daenerys feeds her dragons in front of him. When Jorah says Dracarys, asking what it means, all three dragons turn, and Viserion releases a burst of golden flame, making Jorah step back quickly. Daenerys laughs and explains that it means dragon fire in High Valyrian, and was chosen so no one would say it by accident. Mormont nods and asks if they can speak privately. Daenerys agrees and tells Irri and Jiqui to leave. Jiqui, yawning, quickly dresses and leaves with Irri. Once alone, Daenerys gives the rest of the salt pork to her dragons and gestures for Ser Jorah to sit beside her, asking what's on his mind. Ser Jorah brings up three concerns: Strong Belwas, Arstan Whitebeard, and Illyroy Mopatis, who sent them. Daenerys pulls the coverlet higher and asks why. Jorah reminds her of the Warlock's prophecy from Karth, that she would be betrayed 3 times. Dany murmurs once for blood, once for gold, and once for love. She recalls that Mirri Maz Duur was the first. Jorah warns that 2 betrayals still remain, and now the arrival of Belwas and Whitebeard is suspicious, especially since Robert had promised a lordship to anyone who killed her. As her dragons begin to squabble, Daenerys pulls Viserion off Rhaegal, causing her blanket to slip. She quickly covers herself again and reminds Jorah that the usurper has died. Ser Jorah reminds Daenerys that although Robert is dead, his son Joffrey now reigns, and a loyal son would settle his father's debts, even those of blood. Daenerys questions how Joffrey's desire to see her dead is connected to Belwas and Arstan, noting that the old man doesn't even carry a weapon. Jorah counters by recalling how skillfully Arstan used his staff to kill the Manticore in Karth, implying that it could have easily been her throat he struck instead. Daenerys argues that Arstan saved her life, but Jorah raises the possibility that Whitebeard and Belwas could have been part of a plot to gain her trust. Daenerys laughs, noting that if it were a ploy, it worked. Jorah remains serious, pointing out that the ships, captains, sailors, and the men accompanying her all belong to Illyroy, not her. Daenerys defends Illyroy, stating that he has protected her before and that strong Belwars claimed he wept when he heard of Viserys' death. Jorah questions whether Illyroy wept for Viserys or for the plans they had made together. Daenerys argues that Illyroy's plans don't have to change, as he remains a wealthy supporter of House Targaryen. Jorah, however, warns that Illyroy wasn't always wealthy and suggests that the second betrayal foretold by the warlocks, betrayal for gold, might involve Illyroy, who values gold above all. Daenerys notes that Illyroy values his skin as much as his riches. Jorah cautions her that in Pentos, Illyroy will hold the advantage, not her. He highlights that Illyroy is both shrewd and sly. Daenerys replies that she requires cunning men to secure the Iron Throne. Jorah scoffs, reminding her that the wine seller who attempted to poison her was also cunning. As Daenerys draws her legs under the blanket, she reminds Jorah that he and her blood riders will protect her. Jorah, still concerned, notes that she surrounds herself with men she barely knows and urges her to learn from past experiences with Pat Pri and Xaro. Daenerys considers that while Jorah is motivated by love, she understands that a queen who trusts no one is as unwise as one who trusts everyone. She recognizes that every individual she accepts into her service carries a risk, but wonders how she could ever conquer Westeros without doing so. She questions if Jorah truly believes she can claim the Seven Kingdoms with only one knight and 3 blood riders. Daenerys asks Jorah about his plan, and he explains that while Illyroy wants her to return to Pentos, she should do so on her own terms and not alone. He suggests testing the loyalty of her new subjects by commanding Captain Grolio to sail for Slaters Bay. Daenerys is hesitant, as she had heard frightening stories about slave cities of Yunkai, Meereen, and Astapor, and asks what awaits her there. So Jorah tells her that she could raise an army in Slaters Bay, and if she likes strong Belwars, she could buy hundreds like him from Meereen's arenas. However, he suggests going to Astapor to purchase Unsullied. Daenerys doubts the value of the Unsullied, having seen overweight guards in the free cities who didn't even ride horses. Jorah explains that those Unsullied were merely household guards, which is an easier duty, and eunuchs tend to become plump since food is their only pleasure. Jorah then begins to tell Daenerys the story of the 3,000 of Cahor. He explains that over 400 years ago, the Dothraki, led by a Khal named Temmo, ravaged cities as they advanced westward. His Khalasar, though smaller than Drogo's, was still formidable, with 50,000 riders, half of whom were warriors with bells in their braids. The Khorik knew Temmo's forces were approaching and prepared by fortifying their walls, doubling their guards and hiring 2 free companies, the Bright Banners and the Second Sons. As a final measure, they sent for 3,000 Unsullied from Astapor, but it was a long journey back to Cahor, and upon their return, they saw smoke and heard the sound of battle. Jorah continues the tale, explaining that by the time the Unsullied reached Cahor, the sun had set. Ravens and wolves feasted on the remains of the Cahoric cavalry, while the Bright Banners and Second Sons had fled, as mercenaries often do when facing impossible odds. The Dothraki, confident they would return the next day to breach the gates and pillage the city, were celebrating in their camps. At dawn, when Khal Temmo and his blood riders had led their Khalasar out of their camp, they found 3,000 Unsullied stationed before the gates, with the Black Goat banner above them. Though outnumbered and flanked, the Dothraki saw these men on foot as no threat and charged to ride them down. The Dothraki attacked 18 times, crashed against the Unsullied shields like waves on rock. Despite being outnumbered by 20,000 riders, the Unsullied held their ground with shields raised and spears lowered. Temo's archers fired 3 volleys of arrows, but the Unsullied endured, lifting their shields to protect themselves. Afterward, only 600 Unsullied survived, while 12,000 Dothraki, including Khal Temo, his blood riders, and his sons, lay dead. On the 4th day, the new Khal guided the surviving Dothraki past the gates, where each man severed his braid and placed it at the feet of the 3,000 in surrender. Since then, Qohor's city guard had consisted solely of Unsullied, each bearing a spear with braided hair hanging on it. Jorah concludes his tale by stating that Astapor offers the Unsullied. He suggests Daenerys travel there to acquire an army and then head to Pentos by land. This route, he argues, would ensure she arrives with significant support and strategic advantage. Daenerys expresses hesitation, primarily due to concerns about financing such an endeavor, noting that her most valuable possession is a crown given by the Tormulin Brotherhood. Jorah reassures her by proposing that her dragons might prompt the slavers to bestow gifts upon her, similar to her experiences in Qarth. Daenerys acknowledges the wisdom in Jorah's plan, but remains cautious about the potential dangers of both sea and land routes. Jorah reassures her, noting that the risks are comparable, highlighting the threat of corsairs and pirates on the southern route and the possibility of being becalmed again, which could leave them stranded at sea without wind. Concerned, Daenerys questions what she would do if Captain Grolio refuses to change course and wonders about the reactions of Arstan and Strong Belwas. Jorah encourages her to assert her command to reveal their true loyalties. Empowered by Jorah's advice, Daenerys decides to implement the plan. She jumps off the bunk to get dressed, declaring her intent to command the captain immediately to set course for Astapor. As she turns and asks Jorah to hand her the medallion belt, Jorah suddenly embraces her. In this sudden, intimate moment, Jorah passionately kisses Daenerys, catching her off guard and sparking a whirlwind of emotions. While the kiss is sweet, it also crosses boundaries. After the kiss, Ser Jorah releases Daenerys and she steps back, reprimanding him. He insists that he should have kissed her sooner and more often, as she was meant for such affection. Daenerys, uncomfortable with his gaze on her chest, covers herself, reminding him that she is his queen. Jorah addresses her as his queen, lavishes Daenerys with praises, describing her as the most beautiful, bravest, and sweetest woman he knows. As he starts to call her by her first name, Daenerys interjects, insisting on being addressed as Your Grace. Jorah accepts this correction and continues to discuss the prophecy of the 3-headed dragon that has puzzled her since her encounter with the Warlocks. He explains that the prophecy concerns the 3 Targaryen dragons, Balerion, Meraxus, and Vhagar, ridden by Aegon and his sisters, symbolizing House Targaryen's historic power. Daenerys remarks that her brothers are no longer alive. Jorah points out that Aegon's sisters, Rhaenys and Visenya, were also his wives, and suggests that although Daenerys lacks brothers, she could still choose husbands. He earnestly assures her that no man on earth is as devoted to her as he is. So the book Rhaegar read probably had to do with Azor Ahai, and maybe why he thought the dragon needed 3 heads. It seems an obsession with prophecy is what caused Rhaegar to run away with Lyanna at the start of Robert's Rebellion. Also, the show completely cut Jorah's advance on Daenerys, as well as make Jorah a generally more likable character. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 9, Bran 1. The slope descends sharply from the ground. The sounds and scents of the forest blend into a melody around him. As he reaches the ridge, small rocks scatter from beneath his paws. The term prince unexpectedly enters his consciousness, yet he immediately perceives its suitability. Prince of the Wolf Forest. He is vigorous, quick, and formidable, and every creature in the verdant world respects him. Deep in the forest, a wolf pack is actively hunting. He once had a pack too. He remembers his siblings' scents. Sometimes he feels his siblings' presence as if they are just hidden behind a rock or in the woods. Though he can't smell them or hear their cries, their essence lingers, except for the sister they have lost, Lady. Remembering her saddens him. Now they are 4, not 5, plus the silent white one. The wind shifts and he smells the scent of deer, which ignites his hunger. He finds the deer, now fallen, surrounded by his smaller grey relatives. The pack is already feeding, with the leaders eating first, while one cautious wolf keeps a distance awaiting his turn. The wolf prince makes his presence known. A challenge from one wolf ends swiftly in his favor. A brutal fight with the pack leader follows. Despite the pack's attempts to protect their leader, the prince's superior strength prevails. The elder wolf eventually submits, and the prince, respecting the surrender, takes control of the prey, now his by right. The wolf pack is his now. As the forest darkens around him, he perceives a large man's smiling face. Hodor! The word startles him and he stops. Hodor chants his name repeatedly as he shakes Bran awake from his wolf dream. Bran finds himself in the damp vault of an ancient watchtower that has been deserted for a millennia. The structure is barely recognizable as a tower anymore. Jojen Reed, only 4 years older and slightly taller than Bran, chides him for being away too long. Despite his young age, Jojen's serious manner of speaking gives him an air of wisdom, earning him the nickname Little Grandfather at Winterfell. Bran scolds at Jojen, expressing his hunger. Jojen reassures him that Meera will soon return with their supper, but Bran retorts that he's tired of frogs. He mentions his cravings for deer, recalling the flavor of the blood and rich meat, which makes his mouth water. Jojen asks Bran if he marked the trees, but Bran, embarrassed, admits he forgot. Jojen often instructs him to perform tasks while using his warging abilities, like marking a tree or retrieving a rabbit without eating it. Despite intending to follow through on these tasks, Bran loses interest when he assumes his wolf form. Bran proudly describes himself as the Prince of the Woods. Jojen gently reminds him of his real status and to remember his true identity. Bran, feeling frustrated with Jojen's persistence, declares to Jojen that he is Brandon Stark, the Prince of Winterfell. However, in his mind, he labels himself Bran the Broken and the Cripple Boy. He recalls the devastation that has befallen his home, Winterfell. Jojen encourages Bran to consider his direwolf, Summer, and highlights Bran's dual nature, asking if he perceives himself as two beings. Bran acknowledges that he is both two and one, but he feels frustrated by Jojen's insistence to avoid being consumed by the wolf. Bran prefers the freedom of Summer's skin. Jojen asks Bran again not to forget himself and urges him to mark a tree next time, insisting it doesn't matter which one, as long as he does it. Bran agrees, thinking he could do it right away, but internally resolves to enjoy his meal and continue playing with the other wolves first. Jojen advises him to stay and eat with his own mouth, reminding him that a warg cannot thrive solely on what his beast feeds on. Bran resents this advice, thinking that Jojen doesn't understand what it means to be a warg. Meera arrives with freshly caught frogs. Bran thinks he is hungry, but doesn't want frogs, recalling how the Walders at Winterfell joked that eating them would turn your teeth green. He wonders if the Walders are dead, noting he hasn't seen their bodies among the many corpses at Winterfell since they didn't check the buildings. They use Meera's helm as a cooking pot to make a froggy stew. While it isn't as tasty as deer, Bran finds it acceptable as he eats. Jojen then declares that they should continue their journey the following day. Bran sees Meera stiffen and asks if Jojen has experienced a green dream. When he confesses that he hasn't, she inquires why they should depart, emphasizing that the watchtower is a solid refuge with no nearby villages, an abundance of game in the forest, and that no one will ever find them there. Jojen insists that this is not where they are meant to be. Meera argues that it feels safe, but Jojen counters that the battle at Winterfell will lead to war. He warns that if an army surprises them, they would be captured. Bran suggests that Robb's army might be returning from the south, confident that Robb will soon drive the Iron Men away. Jojen counters this hope by reminding Bran of the Bastard of Bolton in the east, and that Moat Catelyn, Deepwood Mott, the heir to Serwyn, and the Castellan of Torrhen Square have all fallen to the Iron Men. Meera expresses frustration that Jojen wants to head for the Wall and the Three-Eyed Crow, but the Wall is far away, and Bran has no legs to get there except for Hodor's. If they were mounted, it might be different. They discuss getting horses, but it is too dangerous since it might spread that Bran Stark is still alive. Meera presses Jojen about how they will reach the Wall, and he replies that they will walk. Meera feels it is too far to walk and wonders if there are multiple Three-Eyed Crows or just one, and how will they locate him. Jojen suggests that perhaps the Three-Eyed Crow will find them. As they contemplate their situation, a distant howl of a wolf echoes throughout the night. Jojen asks if it's summer. Bran recognizes his direwolf's voice and assures them it isn't. Jojen questions Bran's certainty. Bran confirms that summer has wandered far today and won't be back until dawn. He wonders why everyone relies on Jojen so much. He isn't a prince like Bran, nor is he strong like Hodor, or as adept a hunter as Meera. Yet it is always Jojen who gives the orders. Bran suggests taking horses to ride to the Umbers at Last Hearth. He also proposes stealing a boat to sail down the White Knife to White Harbor, where Lord Manderly rules. If they reach Riverrun and bring Robb home with his army, it won't matter if anyone knows he is alive. Robb will protect them. But Jojen doesn't want this because they won't allow Bran to go north to the Three-Eyed Crow. Bran questions Jojen about needing a teacher, asserting that Jojen already fulfills that role. However, Jojen worries that Bran might spend the rest of his life as a wolf. Bran promises him that he won't. Jojen points out that Bran tends to yield to Summer's will more than the other way around. Bran complains that he just forgets and reminds Jojen that he is only 9, promising he will be better as he grows older. Jojen agrees, but points out that winter is coming, and shares a vision of a winged wolf chained down by stone, which brought him to Winterfell to liberate Bran. Although the chains are gone, Bran has yet to soar. Bran, still haunted by the Three-Eyed Crow from his dreams that urged him to fly, asks Jojen to teach him, believing him to be a Greenseer. Jojen clarifies that he's merely a boy who dreams, whereas true Greenseers are also powerful wargs who could inhabit the bodies of any creature and see through the ancient werewoods to understand the deeper truths of the earth. Jojen explains that the gods bestow diverse gifts. His sister was gifted to be a skilled hunter. He received the gift of prophetic dreams, while Bran has the potential to exceed Jojen if properly guided. Jojen expresses doubt about teaching Bran to harness a gift he does not fully comprehend himself, lamenting the lost knowledge of the first men and their allies, the children of the forest. Meera holds Bran's hand, proposing they could remain hidden where they are, safe until the war concludes, though Bran's learning would be limited to Jojen's teachings. Alternatively, seeking refuge at Last Hearth or beyond the Wall poses risks of capture. She emphasizes that the decision should be his. They have pledged their loyalty to him. The risk and choice are his. Bran considers the great Jon uncles, Hother Horsebane and Mors Crawford, fierce yet likely loyal men. He also counts on the loyalty of the Karstarks. His father always mentioned that Karhold was a formidable castle, suggesting safety could be found with either the Umbers or the Karstarks. Alternatively, they could head south to jovial Lord Manderly of White Harbor, who has always treated Bran without pity. Castle Serwyn is nearer, but Bran recalls Maester Luwin's words that Clay Serwyn has died. It dawns on him that the Umbers, Karstarks, and Manderlys might also be gone, and he could face death if caught by the Iron Men or the Bastard of Bolton. staying hidden beneath tumble-down towers seems safest, keeping him alive yet still crippled. As tears roll down his cheeks, he scolds himself for crying. Regardless of his destination, whether Carhold, White Harbor, or Greywater Watch, his disability remains. Clenching his fists, he expresses his desire to fly and asks to be taken to the three-eyed crow. So this chapter has Bran becoming a bit like Icarus in that he might fly too close to the sun and suffer the consequences, which is what Jojen is trying to warn him about. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 10. Davos II. As he emerges on deck, the narrow tip of Driftmark is fading into the distance while the imposing Dragonstone ascends from the ocean before him. Davos thinks that either Dragonmount is showing signs of activity or Melisandre is burning another victim. Throughout the journey, Davos has been preoccupied with thoughts of Melisandre and knows she is waiting on Dragonstone. She was not allowed to attend the attack on King's Landing to avoid claiming the victory as her own, but now, with Stannis' defeat, her power over Stannis has only intensified. Angered, Davos plans to kill her. Davos learned from the Lyseni captain about Stannis' campaign's downfall during the night the river burned, with Lannisters ambushing and many supporters deserting at a critical moment. Rumors also circulate about King Renly's ghost appearing in the battle, his armor glowing green from wildfire and his antlers aflame. Asking if any remained loyal to Stannis, the captain confirms that a few, particularly the Queen's kin, stayed true. They managed to rescue many loyalists bearing the Fox and Flowers insignia, though many others were left ashore. Lord Florent now serves as the King's Hand on Dragonstone. Davos notices Salladhor Sand's flagship Valyrian anchored where Fury once rested. As they reach the harbour, the captain notifies Davos that Salladhor demands his presence immediately. Davos and the captain find Salladhor Sand aboard a Pentoshi ship, Bountiful Harvest, where he is counting cargo with 2 eunuchs. Upon seeing Davos, Salladhor jokes that Davos, believed dead on the burning river, had returned to haunt him. The Onion Knight assures Salladhor Sand that he isn't a ghost. Sand, noting how thin and pale he looks, embraces him and kisses him on both cheeks and the forehead. He remarks how the sea swallowed Davos but spit him up again. Davos, reminded of Patchface, briefly wonders if he has gone mad as well. He explains that he swam beneath the chain and washed ashore, where Shalaya's dance found him. Placing an arm around Captain Corraine, Salladhor Sand compliments him on his work and promises a reward. He instructs Mezio Mahar, the eunuch, to escort Davos to the owner's cabin and serve hot wine. Sand assures Davos he'll join him after speaking with the captain, jokingly warning him not to finish all of the olives. However, it's theorized that one of these 2 men informed Melisandre of Davos's plan to assassinate her. Davos follows the elder eunuch to a luxurious cabin. Shortly after, Salladhor arrives, joking about the poor quality of the Pentoshi wine. It also turns out the chair Davos is sitting on was built for Illyroy Mopatis, a notably large man. Davos, sipping his wine, asks how San came by a Pentoshi ship, and if he has returned to piracy. San denies it, explaining that while much gold is owed to him, he has instead taken a parchment bearing the name and seal of Lord Alistair Florent. This document names him Lord of Blackwater Bay, giving him authority over ships crossing the bay. When ships attempt to evade his duties, he seizes them, considering them no better than smugglers. He assures Davos he's not unreasonable, taking only the cargo and small ransoms. They talk for a bit. San gently tells Davos his sons, Dale and Allard, didn't survive the battle, but reassures him that Devon was rescued and stayed by the king's side. Relieved, Davos expresses a need to see his son. San agrees and comments that Davos should also sail to Cape Wrath to be with his wife and 2 other little kids. He offers one of his own since Stannis has none left. San proposes Davos sail for him, running secret missions to Braavos, Myr, and Volantis under cover of darkness to pirate silks and spices, making them both rich. Davos declines, affirming his duty to the king. He states that Stannis remains the rightful heir by the law of the 7 kingdoms, and his loyalty lies with him, not San's wealth. Salladhor Saan warns Davos that laws are useless when all ships have burned, and that Stannis has changed since the battle, brooding alone in the stone drum. Queen Selyse and her uncle, Lord Alastair, now handle court matters, though they rule over a poor and rocky kingdom. San explains that there is no gold to repay him, and only a few knights and ships remain. San tells Davos Stannis only sees Melisandre, and rumors circulate of them watching the flames deep in the mountain. This alarms Davos, who believes Melisandre brought the fire to punish Stannis for setting her aside, showing him he cannot win without her sorcery. San advises Davos to be cautious about expressing such views, as Dragonstone is full of Queen's men with sharp ears and sharper knives. Davos reveals his intent to kill Melisandre, showing San a dirk gifted to him by Captain Corraine, the Lyseni pirate who delivered him to Salladhor. San warns him that speaking or even joking about killing her is dangerous, but Davos insists he is serious, though unsure if she can be killed. He recalls how Maester Cressen's attempt to poison her failed, but believes a knife might work. San pleads with Davos, suggesting he rest and recover from his illness, but Davos remains resolute. San, exasperated, warns that whether Davos succeeds or fails in killing Melisandre, he will still be burned as a traitor. He adds that the Queen has already executed those she deemed traitors. Davos, guessing that Lord Sunglass and Hubert Rampton's sons were among the victims, is unsurprised. Despite the dangers, Davos believes the sea spared him for the sole purpose of ending Melisandre's influence. San tries to dissuade him, suggesting they hire a faceless man instead, but Davos refuses, driven by his desire for vengeance. Frustrated, San sarcastically promises to gather his bones inside little bags after his inevitable death to give them to his sons and wear around their necks. Davos hates leaving his friend in such a state and tries to explain, but San cuts him off, telling him it is better if he stays, but that if he is going, then he should go. The Onion Knight leaves. The walk to Dragonstone's gate is long and desolate. The once bustling streets are now empty, with rats replacing the people. The houses are shuttered. Davos notes that while thousands sailed up the Blackwater, only hundreds returned. He silently prays for the Mother's mercy for all the residents of Dragonstone. Davos reaches the gates, finding them shut. Frustrated, he pounds and kicks until a crossbowman finally appears, rudely asking his identity. Davos shouts that he is Sir Davos Seaworth, requesting to see the king, but the guard dismisses him, assuming he's drunk, and orders him to leave. Eventually, Davos gets in. Upon entering Dragonstone, Davos is met by guards wearing the sigil of House Florent, a fox surrounded by flowers, rather than the men he used to know. They lead him not to the stone drum as he expected, but through the archway known as the Dragon's Tail and into Aegon's garden. Confused, Davos asks if the king knows of his return, but the sergeant brusquely tells him to wait. As they leave him alone, Davos begins to wonder why he has been brought here, feeling uneasy in the unfamiliar surroundings. As Davos ponders, he hears bells and a child's laughter. Patchface, the court fool, suddenly emerges from behind some shrubs, chased by Princess Shireen. Patchface sings an eerie song about blood and chains before vanishing into the shrubs again, with Shireen following. Their playful antics bring a smile to Davos's face, despite his unease. Patchface is foreshadowing the Red Wedding with his song. Edric Storm, King Robert's bastard that he fathered on a Florent on Stannis' wedding night, knocks into Davos and scolds Davos for getting in his way. With jet black hair and striking blue eyes, the boy is a young Robert, but with Florent ears. When Davos reveals that he is the Onion Knight, the boy's interest peaks. He explains that his uncle Stannis told him the story of Davos bringing fish and onions during the siege of Storm's End. Davos acknowledges this. Edric proudly shares how his father taught him to fight, visiting him almost every year, and once gifted him a warhammer just like Robert's, although he had to leave it at Storm's End. The conversation turns to Davos's missing fingers, and Edric asks to see the hand that Stannis had maimed. Davos removes his glove, showing the boy his shortened fingers, and Edric examines them closely, noting that Stannis spared his thumb. He declared it was wrong for Stannis to cut off any of Davos's fingers, especially considering the service he had done by smuggling food. Davos calmly explains that while Lord Stannis knighted him for the onions, he still lost his fingers for the smuggling. Edric, still unconvinced, insists that his father, Robert, would never have done such a thing. Davos doesn't argue, knowing full well how different Robert was from Stannis. Before Edric can continue, they hear footsteps approaching. Davos turns to see Sir Axel Florent walking toward them with a dozen guards. Sir Axel greets Davos with coldness and suspicion, despite having once treated him with courtesy due to his favour with Lord Stannis. Axel makes a sardonic comment on his unexpected survival. Davos, not missing the insult, responds with dry humour, stating that onions float. He then asks if Axel has come to escort him to the king. However, Sir Axel reveals a more ominous purpose, informing Davos that he is to be taken to the dungeon. He orders his men to seize Davos and confiscate his dirk, accusing him of intending to use the weapon on Melisandre. So you're meant to think that Melisandre foresaw Davos's plan to kill her in the flames, when really there was just a spy on Salador's ship who informed Melisandre. Again, a lot of magic in A Song of Ice and Fire can be explained through other means and telekinesis. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 11. Jaime II. Jaime first spots the inn beside the river's southern shore. As they approach, Jaime notices no lights from the river nor smoke from the chimneys. Sir Cleos Frey recalls that the inn was functioning on his previous visit and suggests they might find some remaining ale in the cellars. Meanwhile, Brienne considers the likelihood of people inside. Jaime teases Brienne about her fear of corpses, calling her a wench again. As she starts to correct him about her name, he cuts her off, already knowing it's Brienne. He then suggests that staying at the inn for the night would be safer than continuing on the river, and it would be wise to investigate what has happened at the inn. Without answering, Brienne docks the boat and Sir Cleos lowers the sail. Hindered by his chains, Jaime follows clumsily. At the dock's end, a withered sign depicts a kneeling king, causing Jaime to laugh and declare the inn perfectly suited for them. Brienne, cautious, questions the significance of the place. Sir Cleos reveals they're at the Inn of the Kneeling Man, where the last northern king surrendered to Aegon the Conqueror as depicted on the sign. Jaime suggests they investigate inside. He strides forward and opens the door, only to be met by a young boy aiming a loaded crossbow at him, demanding to know if he's aligned with the lion, fish, or wolf. Jaime dismisses the boy's crossbow as a coward's weapon, to which the boy asserts its lethal potential. Jaime counters, suggesting his cousin could act before the boy reloads. Sir Cleos tries to defuse the situation, while Brienne insists they mean no harm and offers silver for food and drink. Suspicious, the boy questions Jaime's shackles. Jaime jokes about killing crossbowmen and inquires about ale. The boy checks through the window for others, noticing their tully sail. Brienne confirms they come from Riverrun as she and Sir Cleos drop their sword belts. A gaunt man with a pitted, pasty face steps out of the cellar, clutching a hefty butcher's cleaver. He mentions they have sufficient horse meat for 3. The man discloses he's not the innkeeper, but buried him and his women behind the inn, suggesting their deaths might have been the work of wolves or lions. Brienne pays for food. Sir Cleos asks if the boy is his son, and the man clarifies that he's a foster child. His mother was killed by the bloody murmurs. The 5 of them eat and drink together. The cook probes Sir Cleos for news from Riverrun, assuming him to be the leader. Cleos, with a cautious glance at Brienne, shares that Lord Hoster's health is deteriorating, but his son is successfully defending the Red Fork against the Lannisters. The cook presses further, asking where they are headed. Sir Cleos notes they are going to King's Landing. The host, skeptical, reports that King Stannis is besieging the city with a formidable force and a supposedly enchanted sword. Jaime, burdened by his chains, secretly longs to kill Stannis himself. The host continues, advising them to steer clear of the King's Road. Brienne outlines their intended route to follow the Trident River to the sea and then find horses at Maidenpool to travel via Duskendale and Roseby. The host expresses doubt. The river is plagued with burned boats and outlaw attacks. He also mentions sightings of the erratic Lightning Lord, who seems to cross the river at will, adding an unpredictable element to their journey. Sir Cleos Frey inquires about the identity of the Lightning Lord. The cook explains that he is Lord Beric, nicknamed for his swift and unexpected attacks, and rumoured to be immortal. Jaime asks if Thoros of Myr, also known as the Red Wizard, still accompanies Beric. The cook confirms that Thoros does. Jaime recalls a humorous moment when Thoros explained to King Robert that he chose to become a red priest because the robes hid wine stains well, a joke Robert found so hilarious he sprayed ale all over Cersei's silk cloak. Jaime suggests rethinking their route along the Trident due to potential dangers. The cook concurs, warning that even if they manage to pass Red Deer Island without encountering Lord Beric and Thoros, they still face risks at Ruby Ford, which may now be controlled by the Leech Lord's wolves, Lord Beric, or other hostile groups. Brienne considers the possibility that no one controls these areas, but the cook advises on overland journey along lesser-used paths as a safer alternative. Brienne voices concerns about needing horses for their journey. Jaime notes he heard a horse in the stable, leading the cook to correct him that although they have 3 horses, they aren't available for purchase. Unfazed, Jaime persists in his request to see the horses. Despite her reservations, Brienne concedes and they all rise from the table to follow the cook. The stables reek from the long neglect. Inside, only 3 horses are present. The man declares none of the horses are available for purchase. Brienne questions the origins of these horses. Jaime quickly identifies bloodstains on an ornately detailed saddle with silvery inlay. After inspecting the palfrey's legs and the gelding's teeth, Jaime advises Brienne to offer a gold coin for the grey, including the saddle, and a silver coin for the plough horse. Brienne, ignoring Jaime's comments on the transaction, pulls out 3 gold coins, offering to pay a dragon for each horse. The man hesitates. Brienne sweetens the deal by offering their skiff as well, allowing him to travel up or down the river. After testing the gold's authenticity, the man agrees to the 3 dragons and the skiff. He offers for them to stay the night. Brienne declines, confident in their ability to navigate by moonlight, despite the man's warnings of the dangers of riding unfamiliar horses at night. The man attempted to persuade them by offering beds covered with fresh wash linens. Sir Cleo seemed tempted by the offer of a good night's rest, but Jaime, refreshed by their meal and eager to continue their journey, insists they ride on. He then points out the need to remove his chains if he is to ride effectively, prompting Brienne to inquire about the location of a smith. Jaime, maintaining his typical sarcasm, expressed his eagerness to leave the stable's smelly environment. Brienne severs Jaime's ankle chain, striking it with multiple forceful blows using a hammer on a chisel. As they prepare to depart, their host advises Brienne about a burned village 6 miles downriver where the road divides. He recommends avoiding the southern route leading to Sir Wyman's abandoned tower house, suggesting instead a path through the woods to the southeast. Brienne expresses her gratitude to the man. Internally, Jaime broods over the gold now in the man's possession and feels frustrated at being disregarded by Brienne. Brienne selects the plough horse for herself, assigns the lively palfrey to Sir Cleos, and leaves Jaime with the one-eyed gelding blocking any escape attempts. As they depart, the man and boy observe, the man extending hopes for a future visit in more favourable times, while the boy quietly grips his crossbow. Jaime offers the boy a piece of advice to switch to a spear or maul for better defence, but the boy looks on skeptically. Jaime scoffs, turns his horse and leaves. They head east along the moonlit riverbank of the Red Fork. Sir Cleos kept voicing his complaints, missing his comfortable feather bed. Jaime's horse, though slow and occasionally veering, gives Jaime the pleasure of riding again, a feeling he hadn't experienced since Robb Stark's archers brought down his destrier in the Whispering Wood. Upon reaching a burned village, they face 2 discouraging paths. One road meandered southeast, disappearing into distant trees, while the other, straighter and rockier, led directly south. After a brief assessment, Brienne chose the southern route, a decision that Jaime found agreeably wise, as he would have made the same choice himself. Sir Cleos expresses concern about choosing the road the alleged innkeeper advised against. Brienne dismisses the man's credibility, suspecting his interest in their route could be a setup for an ambush, as such woods are often hideouts for outlaws. Jaime agrees, suggesting the man might have accomplices near that route linked to the horses in the stable. Despite concerns, Brienne decides it's safer to continue, anticipating they'll encounter soldiers at strategic points like the Ruby Ford and the crossroads. Jaime, though critical of her appearance, acknowledges her shrewdness with a reluctant smile. Late into the night, they halt, exhausted, and find shelter in a grove beside a slow stream. Far off, wolves howl. Jaime reflects on how remote the war feels in this peaceful setting and thinks about Cersei. Brienne offers to stand the first guard, and quickly Sir Cleos falls into a soft snore. Jaime contemplates what Cersei and Tyrion are up to at the moment. He nonchalantly asks Brienne if she has any siblings. Brienne squinted at him suspiciously. "No, I was my father's only child." Jaime chuckled. "Son, you meant to say. Does he think of you as a son? You make a queer sort of daughter, to be sure." Wordless, she turned away from him, her knuckles tight on her sword hilt. What a wretched creature this one is. She reminded him of Tyrion in some queer way, though at first blush, 2 people could scarcely be any more dissimilar. Perhaps it was that thought of his brother that made him say, "I did not intend to give offense, Brienne. Forgive me. Your chimes are past forgiving, Kingslayer." That name again. Jaime twisted idly at his chains. "Why do I enrage you so? I've never done you harm that I know of. Those who you were sworn to protect, the weak, the innocent, the king?" It always came back to Ares. "Don't presume to judge what you do not understand, wench. My name is Brienne, yes. Has anyone ever told you that you're as tedious as you are ugly? You will not provoke me to anger, Kingslayer." "Oh, I might, if I cared enough to try." "Why did you take the oath?" she demanded. "Why don the white cloak if you meant to betray all it stood for? Why?" What could he say that she might possibly understand? "I was a boy, 15. It was a great honor for one so young." "That is no answer," she said scornfully. "You would not like the truth. He had joined the Kingsguard for love, of course. Their father had summoned Cersei to court when she was 12, hoping to make her a royal marriage. He refused every offer for her hand, preferring to keep her with him in the Tower of the Hand while she grew older and more womanly and even more beautiful. No doubt he was waiting for Prince Viserys to mature, or perhaps for Rhaegar's wife to die in childbed. Elia of Dorne was never the healthiest of women. Jaime, meantime, had spent 4 years as squire to Sir Sumner Crackhole and earned his spurs against the Kingswood Brotherhood. But when he made a brief call at King's Landing on his way back to Castle Rock, chiefly to see his sister, Cersei took him aside and whispered that Lord Tywin meant to marry him to Lysa Tully, had gone so far as to invite Lord Hoster to the city to discuss dower. But if Jaime took the White, he could be near her always. A Kingsguard had just died. Aerys would want a young man to take his place, so why not Jaime? Father will never consent, Jaime objected. The king won't ask him, and once it's done, father can't object, not openly. Aerys had Sir Ilan Payne's tongue torn out just for boasting that it was the Hand who truly ruled the Seven Kingdoms. The captain of the Hand's guard, and yet father dared not try and stop it. He won't stop this either. But, Jaime said, there's Castle Rock. Is it a rock you want, or me? He remembered that night as if it were yesterday. They spent it in an old inn on Eel Alley, well away from watchful eyes. Cersei had come to him dressed as a simple serving wench, which somehow excited him all the more. Jaime had never seen her more passionate. Every time he went to sleep, she woke him again. By morning, Castle Rock seemed a small price to pay to be near her always. He gave his consent, and Cersei promised to do the rest. A moon turns later, a royal raven arrived at Castle Rock to inform him that he had been chosen for the Kingsguard. He was commanded to present himself to the king during the great tourney at Harrenhal, to say his vows and don his cloak. Jaime's investiture freed him from Lysa Tully. Elsewise, nothing went as planned. His father had never been more furious. He could not object openly. Cersei had judged that correctly. But he resigned the handship on some thin pretext and returned to Castle Rock, taking his daughter with him. Instead of being together, Cersei and Jaime just changed places. And he found himself alone at court, guarding a mad king while 4 lesser men took their turns dancing on knives in his father's ill-fitting shoes. So swiftly did the hands rise and fall that Jaime remembered their heraldry better than their faces. Brienne was still awaiting his answer. Jaime said, "You are not old enough to have known Aerys Targaryen." She would not hear it. Aerys was mad and cruel. No one has ever denied that. He was still king, crowned and anointed, and you had sworn to protect him. I know what I swore, and what you did. She loomed above him, 6 feet of freckled, frowning, horse-toothed disapproval. Yes, and what you did as well. We're both Kingslayers here, if what I've heard is true. I never harmed Renly. I'll kill the man who says I did. Best start with Cleos then. And you'll have a deal of killing to do after that, the way he tells the tale. Lies. Lady Catelyn was there when his grace was murdered. She saw. There was a shadow. The candles guttered and the air grew cold and there was blood. Oh, very good, Jaime laughed. Your wits are quicker than mine. I confess it. When they found me standing over my dead king, I never thought to say, No, it wasn't me. It was a shadow, a terrible cold shadow. He laughed again. Tell me, one Kingslayer to another, did the Starks pay you to slit his throat? Or was it Stannis? Had Renly spurned you? Was that the way of it? Or perhaps your moon's blood was on you. Never give a wench a sword when she's bleeding. For a moment, Jaime thought Brienne might strike him. A step closer, and I'll snatch that dagger from her sheath and bury it up her womb. He gathered a leg under him, ready to spring, but the wench did not move. It is a rare and precious gift to be a knight, she said, and even more so a knight of the Kingsguard. It is a gift given to few, a gift you scorned and soiled, a gift you want desperately, wench, and can never have. I earned my knighthood, nothing was given to me. I won a tourney melee at 13 when I was yet a squire. At 15 I rode with Sir Arthur Dane against the Kingswood Brotherhood, and he knighted me on the battlefield. It was that white cloak that soiled me, not the other way around, so spare me your envy. It was the gods who neglected to give you a not me. The look Brienne gave him then was full of loathing. She would gladly hack me to pieces, but for her precious vow, he reflected. Good, I've had enough of feeble pieties and maidens' judgments. The wench stalked off without saying a word. Jaime curled up beneath his cloak, hoping to dream of Cersei. However, as he closes his eyes, he instead sees King Aerys Targaryen, alone and troubled, often wounding himself on the Iron Throne. Jaime recalls entering the throne room in his gold, not white armor, and regrets not casting off his Kingsguard cloak. As Aerys Targaryen notices the blood on Jaime's blade, he urgently inquires if it was Lord Tywin's, accusing him of betrayal and demanding his execution. Aerys was alarmed by Rosart's warning that traitors were inside the city walls. The king threatens Jaime with death. Jaime coolly informs him that the blood is Rosart's. Aerys lost control of his bowels, turned, and ran for the Iron Throne. Beneath the empty eyes of the skulls on the wall, Jaime hauled the last Dragon King bodily off the steps, squealing like a pig and smelling like a privy. A single slash across his throat was all it took to end it. So easy, he remembered thinking. A king should die harder than this. Rosart at least had tried to make a fight of it, though, if truth be told, he fought like an alchemist. Queer that they never asked who killed Rosart, but, of course, he was no one. Hand for a fortnight. Just another mad fancy of the Mad King. Sir Ellys Westerling and Lord Crakehall and others of his father's knights burst into the hall in time to see the last of it. So there was no way for Jaime to vanish and let some braggart steal the praise or blame. It would be blame, he knew at once, when he saw the way they looked at him. Though perhaps that was fear. Lannister or no, he was one of Aerys' 7. The castle is ours, sir, and the city, Roland Crakehall told him, which was half true. Targaryen loyalists were still dying on the Serpentine steps, and in the armory, Gregor Clegane and Amory Lorch were scaling the walls of Magar's holdfast, and Ned Stark was leading his Northmen through the King's gates even then. But Crakehall could not have known that. He had not seemed surprised to find Aerys slain. Jaime had been Lord Tywin's son long before he had been named to the Kingsguard. "Tell them the Mad King is dead," he commanded. "Spare all those who yield and hold them captive." "Shall I proclaim a new king as well?" Crakehall asked, and Jaime read the question plain. "Shall it be your father or Robert Baratheon, or do you mean to try to make a new Dragon King?" He thought for a moment of the boy Viserys, fled to Dragonstone, and of Rhaegar's infant son Aegon, still in Magors with his mother. A new Targaryen king, and my father as hand. How the wolves will howl, and the Storm Lord choke with rage. For a moment he was tempted until he glanced down again at the body on the floor, in its spreading pool of blood. His blood is in both of them, he thought. "Proclaim who you bloody well like," he told Crakehall. Then he climbed the Iron Throne and seated himself with his sword across his knees, to see who would come to claim the kingdom. As it happened, it had been Eddard Stark. Brienne woke him with a boot in the ribs. They were back in the saddle before the sun came up. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 12. Tyrion II. Humming, Varys freezes the moment he enters through the door and sees Tyrion seated in front of the fireplace. Feigning surprise, Tyrion teases Varys about still recognizing him. Attempting to appear joyful, Varys admits he didn't expect to find Tyrion in his quarters. Tyrion lightly comments on the lack of hidden information and documents he had hoped to find, as well as the absence of secret corridors. Securing the door, they discuss Varys' absence after the Battle of Blackwater Bay, with Varys inquiring if Tyrion is upset about being left behind. Tyrion sarcastically responds that it made him think of Varys as family. Tyrion remarks on his father's relentless work habits and queries about Grand Maester Pycelle's reinstatement to the small council, suspecting his sister's influence. Varys clarifies that it was the Archmaesters of Oldtown, not his sister, who demanded Pycelle's return, asserting that only the Conclave has the authority to appoint or dismiss a Grand Maester. Tyrion clinically recalls how Maegor the Cruel's executioner unmade 3 Grand Maesters with his axe. Varys agrees and adds that Aegon II also disposed of a Grand Maester by feeding him to his dragon. Tyrion jests about lacking dragons to deal with Pycelle in a similarly drastic fashion. Varys reveals the Conclave considered replacing Pycelle with Maester Gorman, a Tyrell from Highgarden, but when Varys informed Tyrion's father, he swiftly intervened. The Conclave's secretive meetings in Oldtowns were known to Tyrion, and he realizes Varys has informants there as well. Tyrion remarks that his father preempted the Tyrell's rise by reinstating Pycelle, preferring a Lannister-aligned figure over a Tyrell. Varys sweetly notes Pycelle's long-standing loyalty to the Lannisters and informs Tyrion that Sir Boros Blount is also being restored to the Kingsguard after Cersei had removed him for not giving his life to protect Prince Tommen from being abducted by Bronn. Tyrion dismisses Boros as a coward, but notes that he will likely remain loyal, particularly to his father. While discussing the Kingsguard, Varys casually mentions Sir Mandon Moore. Tyrion, suspecting Varys knows much more, cautiously describes Mandon as a friendless man. Varys responds with sympathy, suggesting that Mandon's kin might be found in the Vale, though he was not beloved in King's Landing. Varys recounts that neither Lord Arryn, who brought Mandon to court, nor King Robert, who knighted him, were particularly fond of him. Mandon was not a favourite at tourneys despite his skill, and even his fellow Kingsguard members, including Sir Barristan, felt he only lived for his duty, a trait not entirely meant as a compliment. Varys ironically remarks on the Kingsguard's supposed ideal qualities, saying they exist solely to serve their king. He refers to Mandon as the flawless white knight who died defending the king's blood, with sword in hand. His words, paired with an insincere smile and piercing look, suggest he knows more, possibly about Mandon's attempt on Tyrion's life. However, most likely, Mandon Moore was Littlefinger's man, and Lysa was probably the one who recommended him to Jon Arryn. Tyrion asks for Shae to be brought to him. Varys questions the wisdom of this, warning his father would hang her if discovered. Tyrion admits it's reckless, but insists on seeing her one last time before making her leave the city. Varys tells him he understands. Tyrion mentally questions how Varys could possibly understand what he's feeling. He recalls seeing her the day before, carrying a pail of water up the steps. A young knight had offered to help, and the way she gently touched the knight's arm and smiled left Tyrion feeling twisted inside. They passed close enough for him to catch the clean scent of her hair. She greeted him with a curtsy, and though he wanted to pull her close and kiss her, he could only nod awkwardly and continue on. Tyrion tells Varys he avoids speaking to her, fearing he's being monitored. Varys agrees, mentioning that the Kettleblacks are Cersei's spies. Tyrion, irritated by the amount of gold he wasted on the Kettleblacks, asks if additional money could turn them against Cersei. Varys explains that while it's possible, it's unlikely, as the Queen has promised them further rewards. Ironically, the Kettleblacks are actually working for Littlefinger. Varys reveals the eldest, Sir Osmond, hopes for more personal favours, and although Cersei hasn't slept with him, she keeps him interested with teasing gestures and flirtation. Tyrion briefly considers pushing them into a scandalous situation for his father to catch, but can't see a clear way to make it happen. When Tyrion asks if the Kettleblacks are the only spies, Varys tells him many are watching. Janos Slynt's sons are eager to report on him. Realizing the situation is worse than expected, Tyrion asks who his father has spying on him. Varys laughs and admits that he is the one reporting to his father. Though Tyrion doesn't fully trust him, he knows the eunuch has enough knowledge about Shae to endanger her life. Tyrion orders Varys to smuggle Shae to him in secret, and they decide to bring her to Varys' chambers. The day drags on slowly for Tyrion, feeling like it's crawling by. He baths and gets a haircut from Podrick. Once cleaned up, Tyrion chooses nice clothes, but realizes that dressing too well to meet Varys would draw suspicion, and changes into simpler clothes. As the moon rises, Tyrion goes to Varys' chambers and is seen by Sir Balon Swan and Sir Loras Tyrell, standing guard on the drawbridge. Tyrion stops to chat with both, finding it strange to see Loras in white rather than his usual colourful attire. Tyrion, thinking of how Loras is only 17 but already a legend, asks why he joined the Kingsguard at such a young age. Loras mentions Prince Aemon and Jaime Lannister as examples. Tyrion mocks the idea of giving up lands, titles, marriage, and children for the honour of guarding a king. Loras, unfazed, explained that as a third son, marriage isn't necessary for House Tyrell to continue. He then recites a poetic line about how no candle can replace the sun once it has set, in reference to Renly. Tyrion walks on and heads to Varys' quarters. Stepping inside, Tyrion calls out for Varys. Instead, a fat woman appears, but it is Varys in disguise. He quickly asks where Shae is. Shae playfully covers his eyes from behind, asking if he can guess what she's wearing. Tyrion answers nothing, causing her to pout and question how he knew. He compliments her, and she teases that they should be doing more than talking. Tyrion responds that they need to dismiss Varys first, as he's not one for an audience. Shae reassures him that Varys is gone. Tyrion notices Varys has vanished, realizing the hidden doors must be nearby, but has no time to think about it as Shae turns his head and kisses him. Her eager touch makes him think she doesn't see his scar and the scab on his nose. She urges him to hurry as he touches her, and they copulate intensely. He finishes quickly, but she smiles and asks him not to move, which he does, holding her close. Tyrion wonders how something so sweet could be considered a crime punishable by hanging. Tyrion tries to warn her that this must be their last time together because of the danger, but Shae dismisses his concerns, admiring his scar, telling him he'll never be ugly for her. As Tyrion warns her against his father, Shae firmly tells him she's not scared of Tywin and proceeds to ask for her jewels and silks back. She complains about staying with Lollies. He suggests she can stay with Lollies for now, but it would be best if she left the city. Shae refuses, reminding him of his promise to set her up in a house after the battle. She continues to ask about the feast, talking endlessly about what her friend Simon has told her. There will be singers, a joust, a dancing bear, and a grand pie filled with doves. Tyrion, growing frustrated, tries to explain the risks again, but Shae is fixated on attending, making it clear she doesn't want to leave. As the candle burns out, Tyrion searches the room for hidden doors, tapping the walls. Shae eventually tells him that the secret steps are under the bed, which surprises him. She explains that Varys uses a hidden mechanism to move the heavy stone bed, claiming it's magic. Shae stands to leave, mentioning that Lollies may need her if the baby kicks. Tyrion suspects Varys has been listening the entire time and tells Shae to dress and wait for him. Shae confirms if he is still her lion and giant of Lannister, and Tyrion affirms it. though she finishes his sentence by calling herself his. She expresses her contentment with their arrangement despite never being able to be his lady. She asks him to keep her and keep her safe, and Tyrion, against his better judgment, promises to do so. Inside, he knows he should have sent her away, but instead, he kisses her one more time. The walk back feels lengthy and solitary for Tyrion. He awakens Podrick, who is sleeping at the foot of his bed, to send for Bronn. Bronn, fresh from Shatea's brothel, boasts about his new status as a knight. Tyrion's guilt resurfaces, recalling how Tywin had her whipped because of him. He had sent her gifts to apologize, but knew it wasn't enough. Pushing those thoughts aside, Tyrion considers having Simon Silvertongue killed, but decides against it, realizing the singer hadn't really done anything wrong other than filling Shay's head with fantasies. Instead, he instructs Bronn to find Simon before anyone else does. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 13. Arya II. Arya tenses, all her attention captured by the puzzling sound of a cheerful song. Nearby, Hot Pie also notices and Gendry remains deeply asleep under the shade of a burnt cottage. The song, accompanied by a wood harp, grows clearer. Arya directs Hot Pie to gently awaken Gendry and take the horses behind the cottage, hoping a partially standing wall might conceal them, provided the horses remain quiet. When Hot Pie inquires about her, Arya plans to hide by a tree, confident she can handle the singer if he approaches, and plans to kill the singer alone if necessary. Hot Pie hurries away, and Arya quickly draws her longsword. The sword too large and heavy for her. She longs for her missing lighter sword, Needle. Silently, Arya moves to hide behind a large willow tree. Suddenly, a horse's whinny cuts through the air, and the singing stops abruptly. Arya hears a man questioning if there's something behind the wall. A second, deeper voice responds, and suggests shooting arrows over the wall to force whatever is hidden to reveal itself. But concern arises about potentially harming an innocent person or a mother with a child, but they rationalize that only a criminal would conceal themselves. Agreeing that it's justified, they decide to proceed with shooting arrows to flush out the hidden individual. Arya jumps out, brandishing her sword and shouting for them not to shoot. She quickly counts 3 adversaries. The first man, recognizable as the singer because of the wood harp he holds protectively, appears small and around 50 years old. The second man is taller, built like a soldier. His most striking feature is his yellow cloak, thick and stained. The last man is a young, skinny redhead with freckles, armed with a longbow. Arya stands defiantly in the road with her sword drawn as the 3 men observe her. The singer casually plucks a string on his harp and advises Arya to put away her sword, claiming it's too large for a young boy and that the archer, Angwai, could easily strike her down before she gets close. Arya corrects him sharply, revealing she's a girl, not a boy. The singer apologizes with a bow. Asserting her position, Arya commands them to continue down the road and keep singing so she can track their location, threatening them to leave or face her wrath. The archer laughs at her threat, which Lem, the large soldier, acknowledges with amusement. The singer then offers to take Arya to safety and provide food, warning of the dangers in the area like wolves and lions. Just then, Gendry emerges from behind the cottage wall, telling the men Arya's not alone. He appears formidable in chainmail and wielding a sword, with Hot Pie following and leading Arya's horse. Gendry backs Arya's command, telling the men to leave. As the singer requests their name, Hot Pie quickly reveals his, amusing the man, who then humorously guesses the names of Hot Pie's companions. Gendry, cautious, refuses to share his name without first knowing theirs. The singer identifies himself as Tom of 7 Streams and introduces his companions as Lem, nicknamed Lemoncloak, and Angai. Lem asks for the names of Arya and her companions. Arya, protecting her identity, opts for Squab as a pseudonym, which prompts laughter for Lem. Gendry, following Arya's lead, chooses the nickname Bull. Tom asks Arya and her companions if they escaped from Lord Bolton's kitchen upon noticing Bolton's sigil on Arya's attire. Hot Pie inadvertently shares that they were at Harrenhal before Bolton's arrival, leading Tom to question if they were lion cubs. Arya denies this and asks about their allegiance. Angai reveals they are King's men. Arya questions the men about which king they serve. Lem claims allegiance to King Robert, but Gendry dismisses this, pointing out that Robert was killed by a boar. Tom Seven Strings acknowledges this tragedy. Hot Pie, overly enthusiastic, reveals they are seeking Riverrun and inquires about the distance. Arya scolds him for his openness. Tom then suggests they visit a nearby inn for a meal instead of clashing. The thought of food tempts Arya, but she remains suspicious of their intentions. Gendry expresses his uncertainty about Tom's mention of friends at an inn, prompting Tom to clarify that the innkeeper, Shanna, her husband, and an adopted orphan boy make up the household, ensuring they pose no threat. This is the same inn that Jaime, Cleos, and Brienne visited. Tom tries to assure them of the safety at the inn. The archer Angai demonstrates his skill with a bow, sending an arrow whistling dangerously close to Arya and embedding it in a nearby tree. He quickly readies another shot. Recognizing their disadvantaged position against Angai's archery skills, Arya reluctantly accepts. She lowers her sword. She agrees to visit the inn, but they will follow the men on foot while riding behind to keep a watchful eye on their actions. They set off, intending to keep a distance, but soon find themselves close to the trio due to Tom's luxurious pace and his frequent stops to play his woodharp. Angai shoots a duck and reminisces about how a Dornish girl cooked him duck with lemons. As they cross the brook, Tom and Hot Pie continue singing, which makes the journey feel shorter. Soon they approach an inn located on a riverbank bend of the Trident. Arya eyes it warily and quietly suggests to Gendry that they could use the boat at the dock to sail the rest of the way up to Riverrun, thinking it might be faster than riding. This is Jaime, Cleos, and Brienne's boat. Gendry, looking doubtful, questions whether Arya has any experience with sailing. They dismount at the stables, noting the absence of other horses, but seeing signs of recent activity. Arya insists someone should stay with their horses, but Tom assures her it's unnecessary. Gendry decides to stay outside while Arya, keeping a hand near her dagger, follows Hot Pie and Lem inside. Entering the inn, they encounter a tall, stern woman who chastises them for tracking in mud. Lem tries to ease the tension by presenting a duck they shot, but the woman credits Angai for the kill and scolds them further. She then calls for her husband, who emerges from the cellar, the same man from Jaime II. Shanna, unimpressed with the mention of lemons, sarcastically suggests they fetch some from non-existent lemon trees. This is further proof that Daenerys' memories of the house with the red door is a lie, since lemons don't grow in Braavos. She declares that they will be eating rabbit. Arya, sensing an opportunity to contribute, offers vegetables they've brought to trade for the meal. Shanna inspects the produce and skeptically inquires about who Hot Pie is, leading to an awkward introduction. This is where Hot Pie will stay to cook. Angai and Tom Seven Strings settle near the hearth, while Arya and Hot Pie find a spot near the door. In the inn's bustling atmosphere, Angai raises a cheerful toast to the king. Just then, the husband bursts in with a batch of washed vegetables and mentions finding strange horses in the stable. Tom playfully comments on the superior quality of the horses, noting they're better than the ones that the husband had given away. The husband, clearly annoyed, corrects him by stating that he actually sold the old horses for a good price and even acquired a skiff in the process. This exchange solidifies Arya's suspicions that they are dealing with outlaws. The husband complains that Lem and Tom were supposed to recover the horses, but Lem deflects the blame, claiming the horses never came their way. The husband, frustrated, accused them of being either drunk or asleep during the task. Lem retorts that the husband could have gone himself, but the husband counters, saying he only had the boy to help him, while the old woman was away helping Fern with the birth of her baby. The banter continues with the husband criticizing Tom for possibly seducing Fern. The discussion about responsibility for the horses intensifies, with the husband feeling outnumbered by the mention of 3 strangers, describing one as a formidable woman and another as a suspicious man in chains. After days of sipping from rivers and less pristine sources, Arya relishes the ale, reminiscent of the tiny sips her father once allowed her. The serving boy brings out bread, which Arya and Hot Pie immediately dig into. However, the bread is hard, lumpy, and burnt, prompting Hot Pie to criticize its quality. Lem suggests it's more palatable with stew, but Angai disagrees. The husband defensively tells them to eat it or go hungry, challenging them to make it better. Hot Pie confidently claims he could, criticizing the over-kneaded dough. As they converse, Tom presents Arya with a scrap of parchment, calling it compensation for their steeds. Arya regards it with suspicion, especially when Hot Pie discovers it holds no gold, merely writing. Tom apologizes, promising genuine compensation after the conflict, asserting they require the steeds for the king's purposes. Arya, recognizing that they will take the horses irrespective of her consent, counters their offer of paper with a demand for the boat, insisting they instruct them in its operation and thinking they can use it to reach Riverrun. As laughter fills the room, Gendry bursts in, panicked, warning of soldiers approaching down the river road. Hot Pie reacts dramatically, but the others, led by Tom, remain calm. Shanna dismisses the commotion, assuring them they're in safe hands with the king's men and that they should relax and await their meal. Despite the reassurances, Arya instinctively reaches for her sword, only to be stopped forcibly by Lem, who grabs her wrist and twists her arm. This confrontation triggers memories of past trauma for Arya, reminiscent of her previous captures and humiliations. In a desperate move, she throws her ale at Lem's face, temporarily blinding him with the liquid and breaking his nose with the tankard. As he staggers from the impact, she attempts to escape, yelling for others to run. However, Lem recovers quickly, catching her with his long strides. He lifts her off the ground, and as he bleeds, he shouts at her to stop struggling. Gendry tries to intervene, but Tom's 7 strings blocks him, brandishing a dagger, escalating the tension in the inn. As Arya struggles against Lem's iron grip, the inn's door bursts open, revealing a rugged band of men led by a Tyroshi. Among them is Harwin, a familiar face from her childhood at Winterfell. Overwhelmed by emotion and with tears streaming down her face, Arya calls out to him, her voice breaking. Harwin is initially taken aback by the flayed man sigil on her clothing and questions her identity. Desperate, Arya cries out, reminding him of the days he used to lead her pony around the yard, imploring him to recognize her. Her plea triggers his recognition, and realizing who she is, Harwin demands that Lem release her, acknowledging her as Arya Stark of Winterfell, the daughter of the Hand.